So this morning's class will be our forward bend class, where we peak pose sequence to move into warrior 3. So we'll be focusing on those shapes and actions to get into our final warrior 3 pose this morning. So when you're ready, come to seated in the middle of your mat with your legs crossed. We'll begin there. Good. So come to an easy cross-legged seated position. And just take a moment to settle in, close your eyes. Connect with your breath. Use this time to just check into how you're feeling this morning. Grounding and settling into your practice for this morning. And then gently allowing the eyes to open if they're closed. Gently uncross your legs. Keep your legs crossed and place your hands onto the front of your knees. As we inhale, arch the back, lift your chest and feel the shoulder blades coming together. And on your exhale, rounding your spine as we move through a seated cat-cow. Inhale brings you forwards to lift your chest, gently arching the spine without dropping the head back. Keep neck in line with spine. And exhale as you round through the shoulder blades, curl back onto your sit bones and feel a stretch through your back as you round backwards. Inhale brings you forwards to lift your chest, broaden across the collarbones. And your exhale rounds your spine to curl back on your sitting bones, feeling a stretch through your upper back. Continue for 2 more rounds like this. Inhale, coming forwards. And exhale, curling back. Just warming up the spine and just feeling into your body. Inhale forwards, opening up the front of your body. And exhale curls you back to round through the spine. Coming back to your seated position. And now uncrossing your legs to bring your feet forwards in front of you. Placing the soles of the feet on the ground, feet hip distance apart. Take hold of the back of your right knee and bring your right knee in towards your chest. And then we're gently going to bend and stretch the right leg to start to feel a little stretch into those hamstrings. It might feel a little stiff this morning after all our standing forward bends from yesterday. Just easing in with a little bend and stretch. Good. And then keep holding the back of the right knee as you bend your knee to your chest. Slowly curl back off your sitting bones, round your spine, and gently begin rolling down onto your back. Hugging your right knee into your chest as you lie your head down. And then lying down, continue to bend and stretch the right knee. Gently easing into those hamstrings. Keep your breath flowing, relaxing any tension from the neck and shoulders. If you want to hold that stretch and then just point and flex the ankle, just allowing a little bit of movement to ease into the back of the leg. And then gazing forwards, bend your knee back into your chest, slowly rolling back up to seated. And then grounding both feet, sitting up nice and tall. Good, we're taking hold of the back of your left leg now, bringing your left knee into your chest. And then a little bend and stretch through the left leg. Good, just easing into those hamstrings. Keep your breath flowing. And then keeping your left knee bent, slowly begin rolling down onto your back. One vertebra at a time, lying down, bringing your left knee into your chest. Good, and then lying down, continue to bend and stretch that left leg. Feeling stretch into the back of the leg, easing into hamstrings. And then maybe you're keeping the leg straight and pointing and flexing your ankle, allowing a little bit of movement to ease into hamstrings this morning. Good, and then we'll stay lying on our back as we bend both knees and hug both knees into the chest. Nice big hug, maybe a little rock from side to side. Staying with your breath. So at this point, if you have a strap and would like to use it, you can place your strap over the ball of your right foot. If you're not working with the strap, you can hold the back of your right leg and just walk your hands up as high as you can. If your hamstrings are fairly comfortable here, you can bind your right big toe. And to increase the stretch, you would straighten your left leg along the mat. So if you're feeling ready for that, left leg straight. Otherwise, if hamstrings are feeling a bit tight this morning, keep the bottom leg bent to make the pose a little bit easier. Let's take 5 deep breaths here in your supine hamstring stretch, Supta Padangustasana. Make sure whichever position you have, your shoulders are still resting down into the mat. Try and keep the legs straight and active. Neck and shoulders relaxed. 2 more breaths here. Good. If you're using a strap, place your left foot into the strap and change legs. Otherwise, swapping legs to the other side. Repeat what you did on the right, holding the back of the leg or binding the toe. Bottom leg is bent if it's feeling a little tight today, or straight, extending along the mat. Find your supine hamstring stretch. And then relax your shoulders back onto the mat. Make sure your arms aren't pulling out of the sockets and reaching up, but are resting back onto the ground. Nice deep breaths here. Good. Slowly we release to scissor the legs, bringing the right leg up and left leg straight down along the mat. So now we're moving into our active version where we won't be holding the strap or holding the leg. Actively draw your right leg towards you, flexing the foot, pressing your heel up towards the ceiling. And then see if you can straighten your left leg down along the mat and press up through your left heel as well. Use the strength of your quads and your hip flexors to draw your right leg in towards you. Reach your arms up towards the ceiling and then extend both arms overhead, arms in line with ears. Reach through your fingertips as you come into a lying down version of Warrior 3. Press through the feet, reach through your fingertips, and feel the shapes we'll be making later on. We'll be standing on that right foot. Good. From here, float your left leg up, right leg down, scissor the legs, and hover the right foot off the floor. Inhale, right leg up, left leg goes down. Hover your left heel off the mat. Active, strong legs. One more time. Scissoring the legs, left leg comes up, right leg goes down, and then rest the right heel on the floor. Float your arms down to your sides for a moment as we come into our active Warrior 3 on the left. So flex the left foot and draw your left leg in towards you. Press through your right heel and extend your right leg away. Feel the strength of the front of your left thigh to draw that left leg in. Then inhale, taking the arms up to the ceiling. And then reaching both arms overhead, coming into your lying down Warrior 3. Reach through your fingertips, reach through your heels. Feel the shapes we're creating for our peak pose this morning. We hover the right leg up and float your left heel down to hover just off the mat. Scissoring the legs. Inhale, changing legs. Hovering the right heel just off the mat. Inhale, coming up, changing legs, hovering left heel off the mat, hold for one more breath, and then hug both knees to your chest and relax. Take a moment to soften. Come back to your breath. Holding the back of the knees, roll up to a 4-point kneeling position, so you can roll over feet or ankles, or pop your feet up to one side, come onto your hands and knees. Take a moment here to spread your fingers, pointer finger pointing forwards. Stack your knees under your hips and your hands underneath your shoulders. Good. We're extending the right leg straight back behind you and then floating the leg up. Keeping your hips parallel to the mat, so drop the right hip down. And to help with that, we'll flex the right foot and turn your toes to point down towards the mat as an indicator that your hips are still facing parallel to the floor. Squeeze the right leg up so you can feel your hamstrings and your glutes at the back there activating to hold that leg up at the back. Focus your eyes in front of you, find your drishti, and then extend your left arm forward, so opposite arm to leg. Focus eyes and find your balance. Taking a breath in, exhale to crunch knee and elbow together, rounding through the spine. And inhale as you reach out through fingertips and back heel, squeeze the right leg up, keep the hips parallel to the mat. And again, we go knee and elbow connect. And reach out and extend. Feel your active Warrior 3 back leg. Last time. Exhale, knee and elbow come together. Inhale, we reach out and hold it here. Keep your right leg up at the back, but ground your left hand to the mat. Squeeze the right leg up, focus eyes, focus drishti forwards. Feel your active Warrior 3 back leg. Knee to nose and then step forwards into a low lunge position. Shuffle your foot forwards so that your knee is stacking over your ankle. You might have to bring your hands a little forwards now beyond your fingertips and lift your chest. Back knee is down here. Go on lengthening your spine. Taking a breath in. Exhale to rock back into our halfway split. Flexing the right toes up towards the ceiling. And like we did last night, scissor the hips, right hip back, so the hips are nice and straight. Let's flow through this 2 more times. Inhale, lunge forwards. Low lunge, lift chest. Exhale as we rock back, halfway split. Squaring the hips, flexing right toes to the ceiling. Inhale to low lunge. Exhale, rock it back, half split. Holding in your halfway split. You can point and flex your ankle here if it's feeling a little bit tight, allowing for a bit of movement. And when you're ready, just holding the flex of the foot, square the hips, and go on lengthening your spine forwards, keeping the lift in the chest. Take 1 more deep breath here. Moving back into our low lunge position, ground your hands, but bring your hands a little bit further back so that when we sweep our right leg back behind us, we're back onto all fours. Squeeze that right leg back 1 last time, active warrior 3 back leg. And then release back onto all fours. Take a moment to realign if you need to. And then we'll feel that on the left, extending your left leg straight back. Flex the foot, toes pointing down. Turn your hips parallel to the mat. Squeezing that leg up to feel glutes and hamstrings, actively holding that leg up. Focus eyes for balance, find your drishti. Extend your right hand forwards, opposite arms to leg. Find your balance. Take a breath in. And on your exhale, crunch knee and elbow together, rounding through the spine. And inhale as you kick back, reach to fingertips and back heel. Stretch that back leg. Exhale, knee and elbow crunch together. And inhale as you reach out. 1 more time like this. Exhale, knee and elbow come together. Inhale as you kick back and reach, holding it there. Keep your left leg up. Ground your right hand. Look forwards, focus your drishti, and feel your active warrior 3 back leg. Need to know, step forwards, low lunge position. Make sure knees stacking over ankle. You may need to bring your hands forwards a little bit now. Lift your chest and just sink the hips down a little bit into your low lunge. Taking a breath in, and on your exhale, rock back into a halfway split, flexing left toes up to the ceiling, scissoring left hip back. Inhale, low lunge, lift the chest. And exhale as you move back, halfway splits. Good, 1 more time. Inhale, moving forwards, low lunge. And exhale, moving back into our half splits. Squaring the hips. Pointing and flexing the left ankle if that's helpful, just to ease into the stretch. And then keeping the flex of the foot, keep pressing your chest forwards to lengthen through the spine. And take 1 more deep breath here. Moving back into our low lunge position. Ground your hands back a little bit further back so that when we extend our left leg straight back, coming back onto all fours. Kick the left leg back, flex the foot, feel your active warrior 3 back leg, and then release back onto all fours. Taking a moment to ground. Good, from here we extend the right foot back, tuck the toe, followed by your left foot coming to plank. Spread your fingers, stack your shoulders over your wrists, and keep your thighs pressing away from the floor, strong and active. Slow, strong push through the hands, extra slow. Work those arms as we move back into downward facing dog. First downward dog of the day, feel free to pedal out your feet or bend and stretch your knees. Just easing into your first down dog. Keep pushing off your hands and spreading your fingers. Let's all bend our knees towards the chest and lift the hips up a little bit higher. Keep your hips at this height as you straighten the legs. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale, we bend the knees. Lift your sit bones to point up to the ceiling as much as possible. Keep your hips up as you begin straightening out your legs. 1 more time like this. Inhale, we bend the knees. Lift the hips. And then straighten out your legs. Try and keep your hips this height in your down dog. And maybe you lower your heels to the mat, but don't do that and lose the height of your hips. 1 more breath here now, down dog. Let's slowly begin to walk our feet towards the top of the mat until we're standing between our hands. Bring the hands to the shins for a halfway lift. Press chest forwards. Lengthen your spine and keep the neck long. So don't scrunch your neck here. Exhale to forward fold, head down, hands in line with feet. Relax the back of your neck. Option to bend the knees a little if you need to. Let's rise up to standing, arms up overhead. Hastasana, high mountain. Reach up through your fingertips, feel the length through the sides of your body. And then exhale, release your arms to your sides. Tadasana, mountain pose. And take a moment to ground. Come back to your breath. Eyes open if they're closed. Inhale, arms up, high mountain. Reach up through your fingertips. Now let's go extra slow forward fold coming down. I don't mind if your arms are out to the sides. If you want to challenge it, arms forwards ahead of you. Slow lower to work into those hamstrings. Until we can take the hands back in line with the feet and forward fold, head down. Bringing hands into the shins, pressing the chest forwards, halfway lift, keeping the back of the neck long. Grounding through the hands, take a big step back into plank. Spreading fingers, opening palms, shoulders stacking over wrists. Active legs, pushing away from the floor. Taking a breath in your plank. And now extra slow, strong push. Push into your hands as if it's the only muscles working to take you back. Push, 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 push. Feel those triceps and arms working to slowly move back into down dog. And then in your downward dog, go on lifting your hips up as high as possible. Even if that means your heels lift, even if that means your knees bend a little bit, get the hips up. Coming into our 3-legged dog, right leg comes up. Flex the right foot and keep your hips parallel to the mat. So your leg won't lift very high. Feel your right leg is an active warrior 3 back leg there. Keep pushing into your hands. Take your breath in. And on your exhale, bring your right knee to your nose. Rock forwards into the hands. Round through the spine. Inhale, kick back. 3-legged dog, active straight warrior 3 back leg. 2 more like this. Exhale, knee to nose. Inhale, kick back, warrior 3, back leg. One more time, exhale, knee to nose. Inhale, kick back. Strong, active back leg. Now step forwards between your hands. Check that knee stacked over your ankle. Back leg is straight. Rise up into high lunge. And reach up through your arms. Extend through your fingertips. From your high lunge, straighten your right leg. Squeeze the thighs together, scissor the right hip back. Slow forward fold into pyramid. Extra slow. Reaching forwards through those fingertips. Keep your eyes focused for balance. Keep pressing into your right big toe. Hugging the thighs together for stability. And then place your hands on the floor. Good. From here, we bend the right knee. Little lunge. Exhale, straighten the right leg, pyramid pose. Square off your hips. Keep trying to lengthen through your spine. Keep hands on the floor as we inhale, lunge forwards. Exhale, straighten back, pyramid. One more time, inhale to lunge. Exhale, straighten back, pyramid pose. Lift your chest, lengthen your spine, square off the hips. Take one more deep breath here. Move back into low lunge and ground your hands. Sweep the right leg up, 3-legged dog. Foot is flexed, toes are pointing down, hips are straight. And release back into downward facing dog. Take a breath to ground here in your downward dog. Go on lifting your hips to the ceiling. Left leg rises for 3-legged dog. Active warrior 3, back leg. Hips parallel. Inhale, and on exhale, round knee to nose. Shift your weight forwards into the hands. And inhale, kick back. 3-legged dog, back leg is straight. Flex the foot, toes pointing to the mat. Exhale to come forwards, knee to nose. And press it back, 3-legged dog. One more time, exhale, knee to nose. Inhale, 3-legged dog, active back leg. Stepping forwards between the hands. Checking that knee stacking over ankle, back leg is straight. Inhale, arms up for high lunge. Reach up through your arms and through the sides of your body. Straighten your left leg. Hug thighs together, scissor left hip back. Slow forward fold into pyramid pose, pushing down through the left foot. Hugging thighs together. Focusing eyes, drishti, for balance. Until your hands find the mat, pyramid pose. Good. From your pyramid, bend the left knee, little lunge, inhale. Exhale, straighten left leg back into pyramid. 2 more like this. Inhale to lunge forwards. Exhale, push back, pyramid pose. Trying to keep the lift in the chest, on the fingertips. Last time, inhale to lunge. Exhale, push back, pyramid pose. Square off the hips. Lift through the chest. Keep neck in line with spine. Hold here for 1 more breath in your pyramid. Bending the left knee, ground through the hand sweep, left leg up, 3-legged dog. Square the hips, active warrior 3, back leg. And release back into downward facing dog. Take a moment to ground and breathe here in your down dog, continuing to push into your hands and lift the hips. Gazing to the top of the mat, walk, step, or jump between your hands. Inhale to halfway lift, press chest forwards, lengthen your spine. And exhale to forward fold, head down, softening the back of the neck. Rise up to standing, high mountain, reach up through the fingertips, lengthen through your arms. And then releasing hands to your sides, take a moment to ground here in Tadasana, mountain pose. Coming back to your breath. Take a moment to come back to your stillness. Keep the lift of your chest, length through the spine. Eyes open, inhale, arms up, reach up, Hastasana, high mountain. Slow forward fold, coming down. Until the hands ground on either side of the feet, head down, relax the neck. Inhale to a halfway lift, press chest forwards. Grounding through the hands, step back into plank. Stacking shoulders, spreading fingers, active legs. Now slow, strong push into downward dog. I want to see those arms shaking. Go on, lifting your hips high in your downward dog. Right leg comes up, three-legged dog, hips are squared off. Big step forwards between your hands, high lunge. Check, is knee stacked over ankle, back leg straight, inhale, arms up. Active pyramid this time as we straighten the right leg. Slowly fold into your pyramid pose, this time taking the arms towards the mat and then back behind you into aeroplane arms. Keeping the back straight. And then we bend the right knee, move back into high lunge, inhale, arms sweep up. And then we straighten the right leg, fold forwards, pyramid pose, arms extending back into aeroplane. One more time like this. Bend the right knee, sweep arms up, high lunge. Inhale. Exhale, we straighten the front leg, fold into pyramid and sweep the arms back into aeroplane arms. Holding it here in your active pyramid pose. Bend your right knee. Look forwards, drishti. Shift your weight into the right foot. See if you can float left leg up, warrior three, just briefly. Square the hips, flex the back foot. Bring your hands to the mat. It forwards underneath your shoulders. Square your hips and fold into standing splits, but with your hips parallel. So your left leg won't go up very high. Bend your right knee and curtsy your left knee behind your right thigh. So the thighs cross over. And then push back into standing splits, left leg up. Hips parallel. Two more like that. Curtsy squat, left thigh behind right thigh. Bend the knees. And then squeeze left leg up, standing splits, hips parallel. Last time. Curtsy squat, inhale. Exhale, push back, standing split, holding your standing splits, folding your head towards your shin. Just briefly, as we bend the right knee, take a big step back with your left foot. Walk your hands to the side of the mat, come into your wide-legged forward fold, just briefly. And then walk your hands all the way to the back of your mat, to take pyramid pose over your left leg. And here we'll fold head down, square off the hips, forward fold, pyramid pose at the back of your mat on the left leg. Inhale, lift your chest. Bend your left knee. Hug your right knee to your chest as you come up to standing, one-legged Tadasana. One-legged mountain. Arms overhead, kick your right leg forwards. Now we're going to do a pistol squat to the floor. So slowly start to bend the left knee. If you need to at any point, you can put your right heel down, or you're going to try and sit and hover in that squat. Very mean, very nasty. And then sit on your bum with your right leg in front of you. Or just simply come to sitting with your right leg straight. Forward fold, taking your fingers towards your right foot. Left knee is still bent. Knee is up to the ceiling. Take a breath here to ground. I know that's not an easy transition. Inhale, arms up, reach up. Take your right hand behind you. Fingertips pointing towards the front of your mat. Turn towards your right hip, towards the side of the mat. And then you're going to press up into like a supported side plank. Yes. Lift the hips, push off the right hand, lift the hips. Now put your left hand on the floor, pivot around back into plank or downward facing dog. You may have to walk a little bit back on your mat, that's normal. Take a moment to ground here in your down dog, well done. We'll feel that on the left, so taking the left leg up, three-legged dog. Square the hips, flex the back foot down, push into your hands. Big step forwards for high lunge. Check knees are placed, back legs straight. When you're ready, arms up for high lunge. Reach up. Straighten the left leg. Slowly begin to fold forwards for pyramid pose. And then extend your arms behind you to airplane arms. We flow through that again, bending the left knee. Inhale, arms up, high lunge. Straighten the left leg. Fold forwards, pyramid pose. And then send your arms back behind you into airplane arms, keeping the chest a little lifted. One more time, bend the left knee, arms up, high lunge. Good. And then straighten the leg, forward fold. Pyramid pose with airplane arms reaching back. Look forwards, bend your left knee. Find your drishti to step into warrior three. Shift the weight into the left foot. Big step forwards to hover the right leg out at the back. Flex the toes, square the hips, just briefly. Hands come to the mat, underneath the shoulders, standing splits, head down. Square the hips, flex the foot. Breathe in. Exhale to bend the left knee and curtsy squat your right thigh behind your left, crossing the legs. And then squeezing right leg up, standing splits. Hips still parallel. And exhale, curtsy squat. Inhale, kick out, standing splits. Exhale, curtsy squat. Inhale, kick out, standing splits to hold. Forward fold, head down. Bend the left knee, take a big step towards the back of the mat. Walk your hands to the side, wide-legged forward fold, just to pause. And then continue to walk around to face the back of your mat, come into pyramid pose on your right leg. Square the hips, breathe in, and exhale, forward fold over your right leg. Take a breath here. Bend your right knee. Focus your eyes. Drishti. Come up to standing. Hug your left knee into your chest. One-legged Tadasana. Arms up overhead. Kick your left leg forwards. Take a breath. Slowly come down to sitting with your left leg extended out in front of you. Maybe that's a quick movement. Maybe it's a slow, controlled pistol squat. Whenever you get to the ground, forward fold, hands to your left foot. Right knee is still bent and the knee is squeezing up towards your right shoulder. Take a breath here. Allow your right bum cheek to lift off the mat to assist in this forward fold. Good. Next, we're moving to our side plank to the left. Are you ready? Arms up, inhale. Take your left hand back behind you. Your left fingertips are pointing towards the front of the mat. Turn towards your left hip, so you're resting on the left outer hip. Push into your left foot, push into the right ball of foot as you press hips up for side plank. Top arm extends overhead. And then flip back into your downward facing dog, walking the feet out a little bit to come back into downward facing dog. Breathing here, go on lifting the hips. Gazing to the top of the mat, option to walk, step or jump to hands. Hands to shins, inhale, halfway lift. Press chest forwards. Exhale, forward fold, head down, relax the back of your neck. Rising up to standing, coming up, high mountain, reach up. And then arms to your sides, taking a moment to ground back in Tadasana. Back to your breath. So we'll be playing with a few versions of Warrior 3 like we did the last time. So we're going to come from tree pose, Vrikshasana. So let's stand our weight onto the right foot. Focus eyes for balance. And bring your left leg up into tree pose. Left knee bent, standing on the right foot. Bring hands to the center of your chest. Focus your eyes for balance. We'll keep hands in the center of the chest as we extend the left leg back. Flex the foot, toes pointing down, and then lean the chest forwards into a Warrior 3 with hands in the center of the chest. Square the hips, keep your chest lifted, so don't collapse your shoulders. Lift your chest, focus eyes for balance. Bend your right knee, take a big step back, high lunge. Inhale, arms up. Good. Now we're going to aeroplane the arms back, lean forwards like an arrow pose. With aeroplane arms, we enter our Warrior 3 by shifting the weight into the right foot. Leaning forwards, keeping your chest lifted, aeroplane arms in Warrior 3. Maybe you want to feel your hips, hold your hips if you want, and see if you can drop the left hip down, turn left toes to the floor, aeroplane arms in Warrior 3. Keep pushing through the back heel. Take one more breath. Bend your right knee, step back, hands to the mat. Right leg up. Three-legged dog. Good. And grounding back into downward facing dog. Take a moment to breathe here and ground. Left leg up, three-legged dog. Step forwards between the hands, high lunge. Inhale, arms up. Full version this time. We bring our arms over the head, lean forward, bringing the upper body parallel to the floor. Focus eyes for balance. Shift your weight to the left foot, right leg floats up. Warrior three, reach through the fingertips, reach through the back heel. Slowly come up to standing, bring your right foot up into tree pose. Right heel connects with left inner thigh, hands to heart center to start from the top. Take a breath here to ground. Find your drishti and keep your eyes locked on that still point. Begin to extend your right leg back. Flex the foot, toes pointing down, hips parallel. Leaning your chest forwards like a pendulum action into warrior three, hands in the center of the chest. Collarbones open, chest is still lifted. Bend the left knee, big step back. High lunge, inhale, arms up. Aeroplane your arms back as you lean your chest forwards. Focus eyes for balance. With arms in airplane, don't collapse your chest. Lift your chest up a little bit. Yes. Then shift your weight. Hovering the back leg up. Come into warrior three. Flex the right toes. Toes point to the mat. Chest is still lifted. Take one more breath. Bend the left knee, low lunge, hands ground. Well done. Hands on the mat. Left leg up, three-legged dog. Back to downward dog. Take a moment to ground here in your down dog. We'll feel that on the other side. Right leg up, three-legged dog. Step forwards between the hands. Arms up for high lunge. Full version this time with arms overhead. So bring the chest parallel towards the floor, but don't drop your chest, yeah? Keep your chest lifted. Shift your weight to the right foot. Step into warrior three. Feel the left hip dropping down. Toes flexing to the mat. Hold for one more breath. Reach through your fingertips. Come up to standing, feet together, arms up, high mountain. And release arms down to your sides. Taking a moment to ground. Well done. Come back to your breath. Eyes open, bend the knees, sweep into Utkatasana, chair pose. Weight back into the heels. Bend the knees and come all the way down to a low squat position, Malasana. Open the knees out. Bring your shoulders on the inside of the knees, hands to the floor, round the spine. Sit back onto your bum. Bring your feet out in front of you. And then ever so slowly roll down onto your back. Take a moment with your knees bent and soles of feet on the ground, just to soften here. Lengthen spine, coming back into its natural curves, natural position, just grounding. Wiggle your feet the width of the mat, so feet are a little wider than hip distance. Bring your arms into a cactus position with elbows bent. And then twist your knees over to the right and just feel a nice easy twist in the hips. Inhale as you draw your knees through center. And then twist to the other side. And continue to do this in your own time, rolling knees from side to side, gently releasing and unwinding. Do one more on each side so that you feel even. And then let your legs settle back in the center and shuffle your feet back to hip distance. If you have a block handy, you can do a supported bridge pose, otherwise a normal bridge. So if you don't have a block, we'll press the hips up into bridge. If you do have a block handy, you can place your block underneath your pelvis. So it's not in your spine. It's under those two little dimples in your lower back, underneath the actual hips, not in the spine. Find your version of bridge. If you're in the active version, feel free to interlace your fingers. Feel a last squeezing up through the legs. If you're on the block, it should feel quite delicious and relaxing. And then you will just rest on the block. So wherever you are, take one more deep breath in your bridge. Those on the block can stay here a little bit longer. Those that are in the active version, release your hands and lower down onto your back. If you're on the block and would like to stay here a little bit longer because it feels really nice, please feel free to. Wherever you are now, just find a position to rest in. Maybe you're straightening your legs in Shavasana. Maybe you're going to stay here a little bit longer on your block. Please make sure that you're comfortable and warm. And at any point, you can take your block out from underneath you and move to Shavasana at any moment. I'm going to leave that up to you. Find a position to rest in. Close your eyes. And just settle wherever you are. See, on the day like today, you have reading. So like today we're doing backbends. So you kind of have to look forward to what's happening on the day and then see, oh, I need to read over backbends, right? It also there has the videos you needed to watch for your anatomy. Okay, so you just need to look forwards a little bit over the weeks and during the in-between weeks. What is happening on my next weekend? What do I need to read? What do I need to watch in preparation for the sessions? Okay, so you'll see in one of those columns is kind of the prep work. You have your topics, you have your times, and then you'll see what prep work you need to do, and then what homework also during the week. Okay, so now that you're getting used to how this all kind of runs, I need you to look forwards to see what you need to prepare for each day. Okay. Cool. So today, we're going to be doing some backbends, my favorites. We'll be starting with some small backbends, okay? And we'll be going through kind of our baby backbends. My internet is saying it's a little bit unstable. I hope you can all hear me all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All fine. Okay. Okay. I might glitch out a little bit. So we'll be starting with the more accessible backbends that we can teach everyone. Okay, so when we do backbends, first of all, what would be good prep poses for backbends? So we've done the backbend sequence, we'll do it again tomorrow. What are poses we do to prepare for backbends?
Lengthening.
We want to encourage lengthening through the spine. Absolutely. And what poses could we feel that? What poses have we felt it before in?
And in the asana.
Anjani Asana, low lunge with a back bend, absolutely, is one of our best back bend prepping poses because we can feel that lengthening out through the spine. And what are we stretching in Anjani Asana, low lunge with arms up as a back bend?
Sides here.
Your hip
Flex.
hip flexors. Yes, your hip flexors and a little bit into the quads. Okay, so that's what we warm up a lot to prepare for back bends, because in back bends we're bending backwards, so we want to stretch the whole front of the body. So quads, your thighs, your hip flexors, we want to lengthen through the spine. And then depending on the back bend, we'll also be doing a lot of shoulder warming up. Okay. So we do a lot of low lunging as well as high lunge to feel the actions of lengthening through the sides of the body, reaching up so we're not dumping and sitting into our lower backs, but that we're creating space and length in the spine in order to bend backwards. If we sit into the back and kind of slump, and we call it dumping into the lower back, it actually restricts you moving back. So maybe you felt that, and we'll feel it again tomorrow in our back bend sequence. When we did that mermaid pose from pigeon, we had one leg forwards and we're holding our back foot and we're trying to get our arms into this kind of position. If we sit into our low back, it actually stops us from moving backwards. So we want to create length in the sides of the body, length in the spine to move with length up and back. Okay. So we'll feel that a lot in the bigger back bends, but it will be our running theme as we go through these back bending poses today. When we sequence for back bends, we don't want to tire out the back muscles, okay? Because we don't spend a lot of our time in our everyday lives bending backwards, right? Maybe some of you do, but most of us don't. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So back bends can be really challenging. Who finds back bends challenging? Raise your hand. Yeah. They're tough.
I do.
Okay.
Mm.
So if I'm preparing your body for a very big back bend, like full wheel, okay, or maybe mermaid pose, I don't want to tire out your back muscles and your spine by doing millions of back bends before. So what else can I do to warm up the spine with other movements, with other actions, instead of just doing hundreds of back bends before an even bigger back bend?
Side bends.
Yes, Lynn. So side bends like this are also, we're warming up the spine in lateral flexion, we call it, bending to the side, without having to bend backwards. Absolutely. What else, what other movements can we do with our spine to help warm it up?
Cat cow
Twist. And Chloe, what did you say?
Cat cow pose.
Yes, cat-cow pose, just creating some warming. And I think Nicole said twists, or Andrea, I'm not sure, someone on that side of my screen. Twists are also very helpful to warm up the spine. Okay, so you'll notice we do quite a lot of those kind of actions when we do the back bend sequence, right? We do side bends, we do a few twists, and then we do a lot of shoulder warming up poses. Okay, so we work the shoulders quite a bit in back bends, right? And especially big back bends when our arms are overhead, like full wheel or full pigeon if you're trying to hold your back foot, and those kind of bigger, crazier ones. Because our spine is pretty much, your spine is your spine. Warming up over an hour, we're not going to change how far your spine bends backwards, right? Because it's bones. Would you agree? We can warm up the muscles around it, but we're not going to take your maybe a flatter back spine and make it into a super bendy spine over an hour-long class. Would you agree?
Yeah.
It's bones, right? Your spine is built the way it's built. We can't really change our bones. We can warm up the muscles around those bones, but we're not going to change. So someone might have a very bendy back just because that's the shape of their spine. Where some of you, maybe that don't like back bends as much, maybe your back isn't quite as bendy going backwards, okay? We're not going to change that over an hour-long class. So we use other bits of our body. So we already said we stretch hip flexors and quads in our legs, right? What else can we warm up to help back bend? So we said we do some lateral flexion, we do some lunges. What are we doing with the upper body?
Lifting up.
Yep.
Lengthening.
Lengthening. And what can we do with this? Because shoulders are big in back bends. We do a lot with our shoulders.
Opening the shoulders.
Yes. So it depends on the back bend, of course. What can we do? So Chloe's got this pose here, which is fantastic. So what are we stretching when we do this with our arms? We call it Gomukasana arms, cow face arms. Most of all, let's talk about the top arm first. What's stretching? Tricep muscles, okay? So that is really useful if I'm doing mermaid pose, that I've stretched my tricep muscles, yes? So, and also if I'm doing mermaid or holding my foot at the back or full wheel, anything where our arm is over our head in a back bend, we need to warm up that shoulder in order to do it, right? So that's one thing we can do. What else can we do? What else can we stretch for back bends in our shoulders? Front. So what are we stretching in the front?
Across your chest.
Across your chest, absolutely. So we're stretching pecs, right? What poses can we stretch our pecs in?
Baby cobra.
Okay.
Twists. No.
Cobra. Lie in your block, and then you if you put two blocks in front of you, and then you push out like that or against the wall if you don't have blocks.
Yes, Celine. So when we bring our arm onto the wall like that and we turn and open that chest, right? And if we're doing it in a yoga class, like that's it, Chloe. What else can we do? What other arm shapes can we create to feel more opening in the chest?
Cactus arms.
Cactus arms are quite nice. So we can lie down and do some cactus arms. We can bring in cactus arms into our flow to encouraging that opening in the chest and the shoulder blades coming together. What other things can we do with our arms that stretch to the front in the pecs? We did one of them last night in our wide-legged forward fold.
Interlacing.
Interlace your fingers behind your back and then straighten the arms. Can you feel that stretch?
Yeah.
So we can feel the stretch in the front here. What is happening between your shoulders at the back, your shoulder blades?
And coming together.
They're coming together, which is what we want in back bends, right? Okay. So if we're doing a cobra pose, okay, our shoulder blades are coming together. So by doing prep work like cactus and fingers interlaced behind the back where the shoulder blades are coming together, we're warming up those shapes and actions to do them again later on. Okay. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So for back bends, we need to warm up shoulders as well, big time, okay, a lot. And the bigger the back bend, sometimes the more the shoulders have to work, okay. If you take your arms up, and you may have done this in your little anatomy, if you bring your arm up Does anyone remember what this action is called when your arm comes up?
Flexion.
Yay! Well done. Shoulder flexion. You've got it. Shoulder flexion is very useful for back bends. Why? Why would taking your arm up like this be useful in a back bend?
Because it's taking the shoulder down the back. It's taking the, whatever this is, scapula down the back.
It's actually to
probably
move your
helps you with-
scapula up a little bit. Belinda, what did you say?
It's lengthening your body. Possibly with spine extension.
Yeah, it helps. So what is happening if my arm stops here, okay, and I need to reach back and hold my foot and try and put my foot on my head. Let's just make it extreme.
Shoulder extension.
Lengthening the body.
Shoulder, not shoulder extension, shoulder.
Shoulder flexion. If my arm can go further back, it's going to be closer to hold my foot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And also if I'm pushing up into full wheel, if my arm stops here in full wheel, what is my wheel going to look like?
That's not going to be as rounded.
It's not going to be as an even arc. Absolutely. If my arm stops here in full wheel, what's it going to look like?
Weird.
Like you.
It's going to be a very big back bend. Okay. So it's very complicated. Don't stress about it too much. We'll feel it more when we do those bigger back bends. But warming up your shoulders is crucial for a lot of back bends. And especially when we have back bends, like if you're doing full dancers pose, not the easy one that we learned, if we're doing dancers and holding our back foot behind us like this, we would need to do some serious shoulder flexion warming up. Okay, don't worry about it now. Just let it kind of sink in. You need to warm up your hips and warm up your shoulders for back bends and create length in the spine. Okay, most of all. Does that make sense? Any questions?
No.
Laura?
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to know, like talking about back bends, I just wanted to know what your take is on scoliosis. I've got scoliosis, so curve at the top and at bottom. So obviously I know I'm slightly restricted in certain back movements. But I mean, then what do you, if I'm teaching a class and someone else does have scoliosis, are back bends recommended? Every time I do a class, they say it's really good for the spine, but is it? Like, I don't understand how it would be good for the spine. I mean, how do you know? How do you teach someone then with having scoliosis? Never been taught before.
Roxy, are you talking? Sorry, my internet's just glitching. It is you, Roxy. Hi,
Yeah.
Roxy.
Yeah.
Yes, so scoliosis is very complex. And we have a fantastic teacher that's going to touch on scoliosis with you because it's incredibly complex when it comes to yoga. So scoliosis is a slight curvature, or maybe sometimes not so slight, of the spine. All right. So maybe one shoulder is a little bit higher than the other. Maybe one hip is higher than the other. And especially, Roxy, if you have a double curve scoliosis, it's not so straightforward to lengthen one side and shorten the other side, and is incredibly complex to work with. I would say, generally speaking, don't go too far in back bends. I wouldn't. Because one side might be shorter than the other spine side, and then you're bending back into it, you might be overworking a bit on the one side. So I think scoliosis is a very complex thing to do. And Claire, who's our scoliosis specialist, will be able to give you a little bit more insight onto what she feels will be beneficial. Generally speaking, if there's anything going on in the back, less range of movement in maybe forward bends and back bends. But it's not one of those straightforward things you can answer because it depends on the degree of the curve. It depends on, is it a double curve? It is a single curve. So for now, Roxy, just in our sessions, don't go too far. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good thing to do back bends even. I think
Right,
it's
all
good
the
to
way.
have a strong back muscles. So baby back bends are totally fine. But bigger back bends, you may have to proceed with caution, but it depends on your scoliosis. So you'll meet
Yeah.
Claire later today, Roxy. She's coming in to teach you Hatha Yoga and something else tomorrow. So you'll meet her and then check in with her about scoliosis. It's her passion, it's her love. She works with scoliosis in her body and she is brilliant. So if I have anyone with complex scoliosis, I send them to Claire because she is specialized. And it's very rare. She's probably the only specialized scoliosis yoga teacher in South Africa.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Well, yeah,
She's
looking
awesome.
forward to meeting her. Thank you so much.
Okay, so maybe after you meet her this afternoon, send her a WhatsApp and just check in because it'll be really, really helpful. Okay. In our
Yeah, I
sessions,
definitely
don't
will.
overdo it. Don't overdo it. Just it's not going to be beneficial to go really deep. Small back bends, fine. Big back bends might not be okay. But we'll have to see. Okay. Thanks for mentioning that, Roxy. Okay. And whenever it comes to any kind of spinal conditions, we always need to work hand in hand with a bio or a physio or a doctor to know what movements are safe if you are not sure, okay? Because at the end of the day, we are yoga teachers, we aren't doctors, okay? So the doctor needs to then clear or physio or bio and say, okay, this movement is safe, this movement might not be safe, okay? So if anyone comes to you with something that you don't know about or a herniated disc or any kind of spinal issues, best to say, well, please get clearance from your whoever they are so that we know what movements are safe and what's not safe. Okay. But generally, we don't want to do excessive forward bending or excessive back bending. Proceed on the side of caution, more neutral. Okay, until you have clearance. Okay, with any big back stuff. We're not doctors, we can't diagnose people. We are yoga teachers. Okay, so now we've had a long chat about backs and all of that, just scraping the surface because there's so much. We're going to start to break down the poses now, and we'll start on page 135, 135. We're doing low lunge with the back bend. Asana, which is your crescent moon pose. Remember, we did it in the moon salutation and the back bend sequence. Okay, so great prep for back bends and is also a back bend in itself. Just like high lunge is a back bend, this is exactly the same, just with the back knee down in a lower lunge. Okay, you all with me?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Sorry, my internet's a bit dodgy today, so sometimes it lags a bit. I will show you and then we'll do it all together. Let me just see my, okay, I'm spotlighted for Lynn. Okay. So, from plank, downward dog, stepping forwards into a low lunge, and I'm going to ground the back knee down. If there is any knee discomfort, you could take extra padding. Also, a quick fix for sensitive knees is to fold your mat. Okay, can be a little bit of an issue. And then we inhale, take our arms up for Asana, low lunge with the back bend. So here, of course, I don't want to dump and sink into my lower back. I want to feel like the ribs are lifting away from the hips and creating length in the sides of the body. I'm going to reach up and then back. Okay, so with back bends, it's very easy to bend in your lower back, right? And in your neck. It's not as easy to move your upper back, okay? Because we've got ribs, we've got shoulder blades, and a whole lot of stuff going on there. So in back bends, we're trying not to overuse our lower back and our neck. We're trying to lift the chest and try and access a little bit more in our upper back. although it's difficult, okay? So in this lunge, I don't want to land up sinking into my lower back and throwing my head back like this. We want to try and find an even arch in the spine, that we're not overworking at any one point, but we're kind of finding that congruent curve in the spine, okay? So I'm reaching up and then back, trying to not dump too much in the lower back, but lift more in the chest. And the golden rule with neck is?
In line with the spine.
Neck in line with spine. So if I'm in a little back bend, my neck is in line with my spine. If I'm in a big back bend, my neck is in line with my spine. It is following what the rest of the spine is doing. But we never want to throw our head back like this. Why? Why do we want to throw our head back? We even hear it sometimes in yoga classes like Bikram yoga. It's said a lot. Why don't we want to throw our head back in a back bend?
Because it's dangerous.
You can also lose balance.
Because
So,
it's not,
yes, Lynn?
well, it's not normal, is it? Just not be in line with your spine.
Yeah, so because our neck is very mobile, it's the most movable part of the spine. It can look up the most, it can look down the most, it can twist the most, which means it's very mobile. When there's more mobility, it may mean that there's less stability, right? Like your lower back is not going to be able to move as much as your neck, right? And what do we know? Our head and neck are attached. So if I'm dropping my head back, we're adding what to the neck?
Weight.
Weight. We're adding load, okay? So you're taking your very mobile neck structure that helps you to be able to look around, and now you're dropping your head back. Your head's quite heavy. And you're adding a lot of load onto your neck, okay? And with our neck, we tend to do, whenever we bend backwards, we call that extension. And when we bend forwards, we call it flexion. So if I'm bending my neck back, I'm doing neck extension. If you put your hand on your neck, okay, you'll feel there's that big bony bump at the top over here, okay? And then just go up a little bit from there. And when you take your head back, we do most of the action from about C4, so your little vertebra number down. It depends, you're all a little bit different, but a lot of the action occurs at one point in the spine. And can you feel when you take your head back, it almost, the vertebra almost pushes forwards and disappears. I feel a bit creepy.
Mm.
So at one point in the spine, we do most our neck extension, and then you're adding a lot of weight to that little vertebra in there. Okay, and it's not advised, long story short. You're overworking your neck, very basically speaking, and we want to avoid overworking our neck. Okay. Always. Neck in line with spine. It's your golden rule. Okay. So let's come into Anjani Asana. Low lunge with the back bend, crescent moon pose. When you're ready, let's start at the top of the mat and flow our way down so we get a little warm. Come to standing at the top of your mat in Tadasana. Good. Let's reach arms up overhead into high mountain. And drop your right arm down to the side and take a little lateral stretch, a side bend over to the right. Inhale, both arms up. And then drop your left arm down, take a side bend over to the left. Inhale, both arms up. In high mountain, little back bend, lift your chest. Think of more of lifting your chest rather than overarching and dumping in your lower back. Make it more about lifting your chest in high mountain and then slow forward fold coming down. Inhale to halfway lift and exaggerate the back bend in your halfway lift. Really press your chest forwards. Bring your shoulder blades together and allow your back to move into a little back bend. So maybe your hands have come up a little higher to allow for that. Don't scrunch your neck though. Keep your neck in line with your spine. Place hands to the mat, step back into plank. Strong, active legs in plank. Shoulders over wrists. Bring your knees to the ground to prepare for a kneeling chaturanga. First find kneeling plank. Look forwards, lean forwards. As you lower in 10 seconds, so extra slow, squeeze your elbows to your ribs, feel your shoulder blades coming together and your collarbones opening. Lower all the way down slowly onto your tummy. Okay, good, those arms are working. Little baby cobra, so don't lift very high. Inhale, roll the shoulders back, little cobra, just a little one. Your hips should still be on the floor. Wendy, come down. You're just lifting your chest in cobra. Don't scrunch your neck, neck in line with spine. Good, feel the shoulder blades come together, chest is opening. And then release, lower your chest back down. And then a slow, strong push back onto hands and knees. And back into downward facing dog. From your downward dog, right leg up, three-legged dog. Step forwards between your hands, coming to low lunge, back knee down. And now inhale your arms up, Anjani Asana, crescent moon, low lunge with a back bend. Okay, so still our knee is over the ankle. Place your hands onto your ribs for a moment and feel like you're lifting up through your ribs, that you're not sinking into your back, that you're almost lifting your ribs away from your hips. Can you feel the length in your waist? Keep that as you lunge in the front knee. It's okay if your knee goes a little bit past your ankle with this one because it's a very deep lunge. So it's normal for the knee to go past the ankle. It's okay. Now inhale your arms up and really reach up to keep the length in the spine. See if you can lift your chest up towards the ceiling. Feel like you're lifting your chest more rather than just overarching in the lower back. See if you can find an even arch through the spine. Don't drop the head back. Allow your neck to follow the line of your spine. Lunge deep, reach up, little back bend, lift the chest. Inhale. Exhale, ground through the hands. Step back. Downward facing dog. We'll feel that on the left side. Okie dokie. So on the left, we inhale the left leg up, three-legged dog. Stepping forwards between the hands, coming to a low lunge, back knee down. And then place your hands onto your ribs and feel the length in the sides of your body. Lengthen through the waist without dumping into the lower back. Or maybe for a moment, just dump into your lower back to feel what we don't want. And try and bend backwards by not lengthening. You'll feel it actually restricts your back bend. And it doesn't feel nice. It'll feel a bit crunchy, right? So now do the opposite. Lengthen through the sides of your body. Lift out of your lower back. Reach up through your arms. Reach, and then lift your chest, little back bend. Try and bend more in the upper back rather than overdoing it in the lower back. Neck follows the line of the spine as you lunge deep, lift your chest, little back bend. Good. And then gently release back into downward facing dog. And just take a few breaths in your downward dog. Nice, long, lengthened spine. And then when you're ready, gently release and let me know if you have any questions.
Do you dump your hips, Laura? I mean, do the hips, do you kind of keep tight here, or do you let go and let your hips go lower?
Then we want our hips to come down quite low. So we want a deep lunge. So yes, allow your hips to come low. Allow your hips to lunge deep into the hips. That makes it deep towards the legs.
Do you try and keep your hips level?
Yes, we want our hips level, so it's still that right hip is in line with the left hip. I'm going to spotlight you now. So Lynn here, there we are. So you want right hip back, left hip forward, so your hips are straight. Yes. You are lunging deep into that front leg, so you can feel a good stretch in your left hip flexor there. And then hands onto the ribs, lift up through the ribs to now lengthen through the spine. And then you will come out of the hips a little bit, but we're still quite deep. Then extend the arms up overhead and reach up towards the ceiling. Fully extend those arms and lift your chest. Beautiful. That's it, Lynn. So we lower the hips, but we're not dumping into the lower back. It's about finding that balance a little bit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Any other questions on our low lunge with back bend and Anjani Asana? Belinda, you have a question? You need to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. So you said it's okay in this pose if knee goes over a bit?
Yes. So absolutely, Belinda, because when we walk downstairs, our knees do go past our ankles. So it's basically a look thing in yoga, most of all, okay? Making it look pretty and stacked. And of course, we don't want our knee going past our ankle too much if you feel any discomfort in your knee, like you're loading your knee more by going over it. So in high lunge, I wouldn't say it's a good thing. In this pose, because your back knee is down, we're not loading that front knee so much. And we want a really deep lunge. And you'll notice most of us, without even thinking about it, we're lunging deeper and back bending. The knee goes past the ankle a bit, and I'm just saying it's fine.
And then just the back foot can be down or up.
Correct. So whatever feels most comfortable for your knee at the back. Sometimes people feel by having the toe tucked, it feels more supported in the knee. Or sometimes they feel it feels better with the foot flat at the back. So I'm going to leave that to you as a personal kind of preference. It doesn't change anything else in the pose other than how it feels in your back knee. I tend to do toes tucked on the one side and toes flat on the other side, just randomly for no reason. Whatever works for you. Thanks, Belinda. Any other questions? Happy with that? Can we move on? Yeah. Okay. So our next pose, I'm going to just do it in my own order a little bit in the manual. We're going to come to page 137, for reverse plank. Reverse plank, also known as Purvottanasana. This pose is quite tough. What do you think it's stretching? Or maybe you'll feel and tell me.
Yes.
Yes, pecs. Big time. So it's a big pec stretch in this pose. Again, another pose that's very tempting to throw your head back. We don't want to throw the head back, even though in the picture it looks like she's throwing her head back a bit. You're going to be feeling the front of your neck muscles here, working pretty hard to keep your heavy head upright, okay? That'll be normal and a little bit uncomfortable. We don't want to just drop the head back too much, okay? So I will show you quickly and then you will feel it for yourself. So I start with my legs straight along the mat. Feet are pointing down and feet together. So the tendency in this pose is to let your feet roll outwards. You want to be mindful to keep your feet together, all right? It's just because we're squeezing our bum, our feet want to turn out. Okay, legs are straight. I'm going to take my hands back. Can you see my hands are not right underneath me? Because then I'm going to have no room to lift. I'm going to take my hands quite far back. It depends on your length of arms. For me, it's about a hand's distance back. So you can try that, but if your arms are a bit longer, maybe you need a little bit more. And even just sitting here and lifting the chest, you're going to feel a really strong stretch across the shoulders. And this can just do all the same benefits as the final pose. Okay. From here, we're going to try and keep the chest lifted. And then lift the hips as well. Now it's very tempting to throw your head back. Don't. Either you can look forwards, which has the least amount of neck strain, or you can gaze towards the ceiling, where here I'm using my neck muscles in the front to keep my head up. Another version of this pose could be done with your knees bent in like a reverse tabletop position. You'll be feeling the same stretch across the shoulders. Okay, so come to seated. Let's do this all together. Sit with your legs extended out in front of you. When you lift in the pose, you're going to try and point your toes towards the mat. So start with your feet pointed, feet together. Take your hands behind you. Okay, so again, I'll talk about hands and wrists here. Your fingers are going to point forwards towards your hips, which is a bit tricky. If that felt impossible, you could turn your hands out a little bit, or even all the way back would be a modification of the pose. Okay, but classical pose, fingers pointing forward. So give that a bash first. Hands are a little bit further back, so about a hand's distance or more behind you. And then straighten your arms and just lift your chest, little back bend. Can you feel that stretch across your shoulders? Big stretch, right? Keep that lift in your chest and now push down through your hands and lift your hips up to the ceiling and point your toes down towards the mat. Look straight ahead of you. So you can do that with your neck, least amount of strain, or look up towards the ceiling where you'll feel your neck muscles are working a bit. Point your toes, make sure your feet haven't rolled out, keep your feet together. Push your hips up, lift your chest, and then lower your hips back down. Before we go, again, you're going to lower your hips, but turn your hands out a little bit. It makes it easier for the wrists. Try that with your hands turned out a little bit, or maybe all the way out that your fingers are pointing backwards. And then lift, just feel the difference. Some might find that easier depending on wrist or different arm bone structures. Bev, you need to take your arms a little bit further back behind you. So take your hands further back. Good, and then lower back down. You can also try with your knees bent. So then bend your knees, feet hip distance apart, and then you can press your hips up. It's still quite intense. It doesn't make it much easier. Don't throw the head back. Push the hips up, lift your chest, feel that stretch across the front of your shoulders. And when you're ready, you can lower back down. One of my least favorite postures. It's hard. Questions?
Oh. Yeah.
Shoulders, right?
Are your quads also working?
Yes, Belinda, when your legs are straight, your quads will also be active, straightening your legs, but mostly your bum, your glutes are going to be working to push your hips up from the floor. So more work will be coming from the back, but your quads are lightly active because your legs are straight. And then your inner thighs are also squeezing together to prevent your feet rolling out to the side, which is what we want to do. Because our bum is squeezing up so much, our bum also turns our feet out. So that's why they do that. So you have to use your inner thigh muscles to try and keep your feet from falling out to the sides. So it's just it's a tricky pose that. Maybe that's just me. Some of you look very comfortable there.
Yeah.
See, you have a question?
So Laura, I just wanted to find out if your hands are or your wrists are facing towards the front of the mat, is that better for wrist health than to turn it the other way where it's facing backwards?
It just depends. Pretty much what we do a lot in yoga is we're stretching our wrists, right? Because we're going to be doing a lot of this when we do arm balances and handstands. So it is good to do this in all different ways, with fingers pointing forwards, fingers pointing back, so that we progressively load our wrists in that stretch so that they get stronger in that position. So I think it's good. You can change it up and if you felt fingers pointing towards your hips, the classical way didn't allow you to lift your chest at all. Just because of your bone structure, I would say turn your hands out. But other than that, keep your fingers pointing forwards and work that, because we're going to need to build that strength in our wrists for bigger poses later on.
And then is this a great way to kind of build upper body strength as well? Because it's sort of like plank, but just the reversed way.
Yeah. I think find that you'll build more strength in things like chaturanga and arm balances, where this is more kind of a static hold. Yes, our triceps are definitely working. Yes, our bum is definitely working. So to a certain point, it'll be building similar strength to plank, and it is good, but you're going to move past it very quickly to bigger poses to build more strength. Okay. So I use this pose more so as a chest opening kind of posture, to open up through the chest and stretch the pecs, more so than a strength building pose. Maybe for beginners, it'll be strength based, but eventually you'll get to the point it's mostly about the stretch. Okay. Any other questions on reverse plank? Otherwise, we'll be moving on to cobra pose. So for cobra pose on the next page, 138, in Sanskrit, it's called Bhujangasana. You can see in the picture, she's lifting quite high, which is fine. When we do our sun salutations, I would prefer it if you stayed a little bit lower down. Okay, so it's like a little baby cobra as opposed to a big cobra. So her neck is scrunching a little bit. Yes, not too bad. I mean, because she's in quite a big back bend there, Celine. So her neck is, I mean, her chest is up. It's not completely dropping back. Not too bad, maybe slightly. But because she's in quite a big back bend, her neck is following the line of her spine. I'm going to show you cobra pose, and then we'll do it all together. So we can do it from our little chaturanga. Slow chaturanga to the ground. And then I point my toes and feet are hip distance apart because I've come from plank and chaturanga, right? From here, a lovely activation that I use the instruction in Q4 a lot. I'm not actually moving my hands, but it's a sensation of pulling your hands back like this, right? So my hands start underneath the shoulders. That's where you'll land up from your chaturanga. I'm going to think of pulling my hands backwards to lift my chest, just to about here. Okay, I'm not going to lift any higher than that because I want to feel like I could lift my hands up and my back muscles are actually doing the work rather than doing this and then I've just straightened my arms and now I'm dumping in my back. Okay, so we're going to do it low to the ground, pulling the hands back, lifting the chest, baby cobra. I can check that my back muscles are doing the work and not my arms. Okay, but when you do pull your hands back like this, just as an activation, you will feel your tricep muscles engaging, which is good. You will feel your shoulder blades coming together, which is what we want. Shoulder blades squeeze together. And then I also want to pull my shoulders away from my ears here. So the main benefit of this pose is it's strengthening my back muscles, but also strengthening my shoulders to come together. Okay. And then as you know, we don't want to do this with our neck. We want to lengthen the back of the neck. Draw the shoulder blades down and together. Pull the hands back a little bit. Okay. And then from here, after we release and then push back. Okay. So let's give that a go. Low baby cobra. So come from plank and we'll lower through our chaturanga into it. Okie dokie. So from your plank, bring your knees straight to the mat. Look forwards, kneeling plank. 10-second lower through chaturanga, squeezing your elbows to the sides, bringing your shoulder blades together, opening the chest, not letting the shoulders roll forwards. Shoulders open. Coming down to lie on your tummy. So naturally here you'll notice your hands are pretty much underneath your shoulders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Point your toes, feet hip distance apart. Keep your hands where they are. Feel like you're pulling your hands down towards your ribs, but you're not actually moving them. Just feel how using that now lift your chest to curl up. Helps to get a nice activation in your triceps, arms pulling back. Bring your shoulder blades together. And then draw your shoulders away from your ears. Now, lengthen the back of your neck. So your chin is going to come down a little bit and your gaze is just ahead towards the top of the mat. At any point now, you should be able to lift your hands and that should be the height of your chest, that you can maintain that height. So Celine, you've come too high. You're using your arms. Go lower and then lift your hands off the mat, and that's where we want to be holding in our baby cobra, to build strength in our shoulders and our back. And it's a fantastic back bend to build that strength for our beginners as well. Squeeze the elbows in, squeeze the shoulder blades together, draw the shoulders down, lengthen the back of your neck. And then release, just relax there for a moment. You can put your hands under your forehead if you want, if your back feels a bit tight after that. You can either push to downward dog or child's pose. And then release and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so we'll be doing this pose as a baby cobra, being able to lift your hands off at any point, that we're doing it for strength rather than straightening our arms. Okay. Just because it's the most beneficial when you go into teaching, that you teach baby back bends to build strength in the back muscles and shoulders. Do you agree? Where when you straighten your arms, you almost take it out of the strengthening in the back and all you're doing is straightening your arms and sitting into your back. Michelle, you have a question?
Yes, so do we want to emphasize that the buttocks must be relaxed when you're doing that, that all the work is in the lower back, or are the buttocks also activated and helping?
Yeah,
The
your
left.
bum will activate a little bit, Michelle. That's normal. It's totally fine. It's just natural. We don't need to instruct more bum or less bum, just whatever naturally occurs with the glutes. And it's a great thing that you've brought up, because we hear that instruction a lot in yoga. Relax your bum. The fact is, if you are going into extension, spinal extension, or taking your leg behind you, leg extension, hip extension, your bum works. That's its job. So like when we lift our hips up in bridge pose, we can't lift our hips without using our bum. Our bum is what lifts our hips. So we need to move away from the cue, soften your glutes, because sometimes your glutes are, they need to work in order to put you in a cobra or a bridge pose. You don't need to grip your bum and emphasize excessive squeezing, but a natural activation in your bum is normal and it's fine. And yogis have weak bums, so they need to work their bums, I think. Did that answer your question, Michelle? If you're feeling your lower back, don't lift as high. Do less, rather than worrying about the bum. Kirsten, you have a question.
Yes. How actively do you push the feet into the ground, or is that something you should do, or
Yes, it's
because
a
I
nice
tend to lift them
activation.
up.
I think it's great,
Yeah.
Kirsten. Pushing the tops of the feet into the mat, almost make the legs work a little bit more, activate the quads. It may even activate your bum more, which is also fine. I think it's a great instruction. It feels nice.
But is it something you should do, or is it like an option?
It's an option. It's an option. It's not a bad thing. What it's going to do is anchor you down a little bit more, and it may feel like you can lift a little bit higher. So it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just one way of doing it, just bringing awareness a little bit more to the legs. Any other questions on your cobra pose? Can you feel how your upper back muscles are working there? So beneficial. Yes, Belinda?
Sorry. Is it okay if your feet are together, or do they have to be hip width apart?
It's also fine for them to be together, Belinda. Some might find it's more restricting with the feet together. So with feet together, you might not be able to lift as high, but it depends on your pelvis. If you have a very narrow pelvis, feet together will feel fine. If your hips are a bit broader, it's going to feel very uncomfortable with feet together, and hip distance feels more comfortable. I do it just from hip distance because we come from plank where feet are hip distance apart, and we've lowered down so they're still kind of hip distance. And then we go back into downward dog. So in a sun salutation, feet hip distance apart, but if you're just doing the pose, either is fine. And you'll notice that with the next pose as well, feet together or feet apart, whatever you prefer. If you have a narrow pelvis, it's fine with feet together. If your hips are a bit broader, it'll feel better with feet hip distance and a little bit of space. Okay. Any other questions on Bhujangasana Cobra? All okay with that? Can I move to the next pose? So our next pose is called Shalabhasana, locust pose. On the next page, 139, Shalabhasana. It's sometimes called grasshopper, sometimes it's called locust, mostly locust. Again, this is a back strengthening pose because we're doing it low to the ground and we're lifting away from gravity using our back muscles. So again, a nice baby back bend to strengthen the back, which is great. Again, like Belinda mentioned, you can do it with your feet together or your feet apart. Feel both and decide what feels better for you. For me, I prefer having my feet apart. It feels like I can lift my legs more. But we're all different, so feel how it feels for you. And again, we really want to emphasize the shoulder blades coming together is the main action in this pose, and not scrunching the neck. So I'll come to lying on my tummy, feet together or feet apart, you feel it out. My arms are extending back and my hands are pointing towards my thighs. Okay? I don't want my shoulders rolling forwards. I want to bring my shoulder blades together to open the chest as I lift my feet, my hands, and my chest away from the floor. I'm not scrunching the neck. Neck is long. Shoulder blades are coming together and down. I'm lifting my arms a bit so my triceps are working, and I'm lifting my legs so my glutes and my hamstrings are working as well. Lift, 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 and then releasing down. So the whole back line of the body is working, is very active and strengthening in this pose. Should we give it a go? Come to lying on your tummy. Lying on your tummy. You also must try with feet together and feet apart. Feel the difference for yourself. Arms reaching back behind you. Turn your palms to face your thighs. So your thumbs are pointing down, your baby fingers are pointing to the ceiling. Hover your nose just off the floor, but don't scrunch your neck. And then inhale to lift your head, your hands, and your feet off the ground. Bring your shoulder blades together. Squeeze your shoulder blades. Reach through your fingertips so your shoulders have moved away from your ears. Lengthen the back of your neck. Now straighten your legs and reach your legs up. Feel with your feet together. Feel with your feet apart. Decide what feels best for you. And then lift your arms up a little bit more so you can feel more activation in your tricep muscles. Don't scrunch your neck. Inhale, lift. Exhale, slowly release back down. Can you feel how your bum was working, your back was working, your shoulders working? Everything along the back is engaged. Take a moment to rest there. Hands underneath your forehead feels quite nice. And what feels quite good with the legs is to bring your big toes together to touch and let your heels drop out to the side. So you've almost pigeon-toed your legs and feet to relax the back. Take a few breaths there. And when you're ready, you can push into a child's pose and release your back if you like. Okay, and then gently come back up to seated. I know it's quite tiring. I'll only do one more back bend.
There's nothing baby about that.
I know, it's quite fierce, hey? It's a baby one in terms of its range of movement. I mean, you're not moving very much, but the muscles working, that's intense. But so good, because think about most, I'm not sure about you guys, but most people spend a lot of time working behind a desk where their shoulders are very rounded, their back muscles become very weak, their chest becomes very tight. So these back bends, I call them baby back bends, these back strengthening poses are so good to bring those shoulder blades together, strengthening the back muscles and opening the chest. I think it's one of the most important things and one of the biggest benefits in yoga. Strengthen the back. It's something we forget about, right? Because we want a strong core, we want strong arms, we want strong legs. What about our backs? They're just as important, if not more important. Any questions on that?
Hard, that one.
Hard.
What
Good.
about your hand?
Gary, what was your question?
What about your hand position for this?
Yes.
You said keep your thumb facing down.
Yeah.
Can you like rotate it?
So your hands are pointing towards your thighs, right? And in that position, If you're lying down, your thumbs are naturally pointing to the floor and your baby fingers up, but your hands are just facing towards your thighs as you lift. Some people flip the palms up towards the ceiling. For me, that encourages a bit of rounding in the shoulders. So we want to drop the thumbs and try and bring the shoulder blades more together, baby fingers up to the ceiling to encourage shoulder blades together, lifting in the chest, lifting in the arms. You could even interlace your fingers and lift up, which is also quite nice. But generally, palms facing thighs. That answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay, I'm just going to do one more back bending pose. We don't want to overdo it on our backs. And we're going to flip forwards to page 142 for bridge pose. So I use this pose a lot at the end of a class because it's a nice gentle back bend. It contracts the hamstrings and the glutes. So today we did a lot of forward bend poses, stretching the hamstrings. So it's sometimes quite nice to do a counter pose where we are now contracting those muscles. It doesn't mean that it draws your muscles back in or anything like that. It just feels nice after bending forwards a lot to do a little bit of a back bend. Okay. So for bridge pose, we've done it quite a lot. How did you guys find, if you had a block today, the supported bridge?
Nice.
It's one of my favorite poses is bridge with the block under the pelvis. It's very nice. So hopefully you have a block or some books to attempt that with at some stage. So for bridge pose, Kiriki, taking the bend, your feet are just underneath your knees. There's no need to really like do this and draw your heels super close to your bum, because then when you push up, your knees kind of go over your feet and that might not feel as comfortable. Okay, so your feet are underneath your knees. Okay, knees bent. I'm going to press my hips up towards the ceiling and I'm using glutes and hamstrings in order to lift. So you can't relax your bum here. You're using your bum muscles to lift. Now, your neck. You don't want to jam your chin in towards your chest and almost overstretch the neck, right? Keep the natural curve of your neck by looking straight up to the ceiling so you can breathe and talk comfortably. And that becomes more important now as we move into the bind. You interlace your fingers. Now, what most people want to do is branch the arms, the feet, the hands down towards the feet. And if I do that, can you see how it's pulling my chin to my chest and it's flattening the natural curve of my neck into the mat? So rather, when you bind, rock off to one side and tuck the shoulder in towards the spine. Then I rock and do that to the other side. And then I'm pushing my upper arms downwards into the mat. And that will keep the neck more natural and also lift your chest more. Okay. And then I'm pushing my forearms, my upper arms down to the mat, keeping the natural curve of the neck. And then I release the bind, either lower the hips or roll through the spine coming back. Okay. Does that make sense with the hands? So if my hands, if I'm here, and if I'm pulling down like this, feel it just as you're sitting. If you interlace your fingers and pull your hands down, can you feel what it does to your neck? You tend to drop your chin, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to do that in bridge. What you rather want to do is just tuck one shoulder underneath, tuck the other shoulder underneath, and you're going to push like your wrists away from your hips. And you'll have the floor there, so you'll be pushing your arms into the mat. Okay? Give that a bash. Feel the arm, neck, shoulder thing. Lie on your back for bridge. Bend your knees, place your feet below your knees. Okay, arms to your sides. Press your hips up into bridge pose. Can you feel your bum is working? Poke your bum. It's on. It has to be, because it's job. Your bum lifts your hips. It cannot not work. Try and soften your bum. And then poke it. Is it still on? It has to work. Okay. Now, bring your fingers to interlace. Now, avoid pulling your hands towards your feet. Rock off to one side, tuck one shoulder underneath. Then rock to the other side and repeat. And then just push your upper arms and your wrists and your forearms into the mat to lift your chest. Keep your chin straight up towards the ceiling so that you're not jamming your chin to your throat. You've maintained the natural curve in your neck. Okay. Take one more breath. Lift those hips up a little more. And then release the bind of your hands and lower your hips back to the ground. Can you feel how your bum and your hamstrings are working in that pose? That's one of its benefits. Can you feel the difference of the arm binding, that you weren't wrenching your arms down towards your feet? You were rather bringing your shoulder blades together and pressing your chest up. Is a better arm position and neck position in that pose.
Much better. That's the nicest bridge I've done ever, I think.
Yay! We're going to be quite careful, and that'll be a big theme for shoulder balance. Hot topic. About flattening the neck and coming out of the natural curves of our neck. I mean, bridge, not as much as a drama as shoulder balance because of load, but will be a hot topic for us to discuss later on. Okay, any questions on those baby back bends we've done? I'm going to give you a short little break now. Wendy, you have a question?
If somebody has a shoulder injury, what would you do in shoulder stand to give them another alternative?
So in bridge pose, Wendy?
Yeah.
So in bridge pose, if someone is working with a shoulder injury, just keep your arms down to your sides. So definitely not going into the bind where we would be working the shoulders more. Arms to the sides. And then if it was very sore, maybe not lifting the hips up as much. Maybe just doing a smaller bridge with arms relaxed to the sides, maybe even palms facing up to the ceiling to keep the shoulders nice and relaxed. And definitely not taking the bind, just relaxing the arms. And I always say, if it's still sore, then just don't do it. Okay, thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, so just have a seat wherever you are, either sitting on the chair or the mat with your legs crossed. After back bends, it feels really nice to do just a little gentle twist. So with legs crossed, little twist to the right. Little twist to the left. And then again, little twist to the right. Little twist to the left. And then walk your hands forwards. If you're lying on the mat, you could twist your knees from side to side. And then forward fold with your legs crossed and just let your back muscles relax. Okay. If your back still feels very active, you can lie on your back and do some windscreen wipers of your knees side to side. Or maybe you want to hug your knees into your chest. Or end off in a child's pose. Take one more of those poses. Child's pose, hugging knees to chest, or windscreen wipers, just to relax your back muscles after all those very active strengthening back bends. Okay, just take a little moment just to relax in whatever one of those positions are your favorite. So after back bends, normally we do first neutral. We neutralize the spine just sitting, especially more big back bends. Today we didn't go very deep. Then we would do gentle twists, okay? Because as you know from last night, the twists really work the muscles along the spine and can help release the back muscles, okay? And then maybe sometimes like a little baby forward bend like you're doing now, either in child's pose or hugging your knees to your chest to round the spine a little bit, just because it feels nice after bending backwards to round a bit. Sometimes people even like a few abdominal exercises to round the back and work the core a little bit. So if you like that and you're hugging your knees to your chest, you can curl your nose up into your knees. You could maybe stretch one leg out at a time. Can also feel nice. That's it, Wendy, just like that. So it kind of rounds the back and works the tummy more. Okay. So we're just going to give the body a little bit of break, and then we will be coming into some nice seated poses. Can we have a 10-minute break, just a short one? Okay, if you need to run to the loo or just whatever you need to do, freshen up, make sure you still feel awake. And we'll meet back at 20 to 1, yeah? 12:40, 10 minutes. Quick break. See you in a bit.
Josha, is jy reg nog? Okay, nou kan jy sê daai
Hey, wait. Come on, Juju.
moet vir hom in, want hy het dit al. So moet vir hom in. George, kom.
Daar's niks wild, mama. Iets kleinige skin. Iets kleinige dan nothing shiny.
You're like me, Roxy. I'm also sitting on 2 yoga blocks here, crouched in front of the screen. And my laptop's on 4 yoga blocks. You can build anything with yoga blocks.
I keep falling off them. That's the problem.
I was falling off them last night for some reason. How are we doing? All good? Okay, so on page 75, we'll start with some seated poses. All right, are we all back? So on page 75, you will find seated forward bends, and the first pose there is Dandasana. It's kind of like our seated Tadasana. All right, we can come back to this pose between other forward bends or seated poses, just to make sure we still sit nice and straight and aligned. So in this pose, just like Tadasana, it's working your back and your postural muscles quite a lot. It may be more challenging for those with tighter hamstrings, which we'll explore in a minute. So I will show you first. So for Dandasana, we have our legs straight out in front, feet flexed up towards the ceiling, legs and feet together, okay? I need to be able to sit pretty much on the center of my sit bones, if not slightly forwards on my sitting bones, so that my low back isn't curling back like this, okay? Which can be very tricky for some. If your hamstrings are tight, it's going to be harder to sit with a straight back. So what modifications could we offer those in the seated position with tight hamstrings?
Bend.
Bend the legs.
Absolutely.
Bend the legs a bit.
By bending the knees, you'll be able to move this little triangular sacrum bone forwards and up rather than sitting back and rounding the back. Absolutely. What else do you think? What can we use in terms of props?
A blanket. Rolled blanket.
A block or a bolster cushion. By sitting on a block, and some of you might feel like this changes your life. By sitting on a block, naturally now it's going to help me to sit straighter and tip my pelvis slightly forwards so that I can sit more upright in a seated position. And this might apply even for forward bends or cross-legged seated poses. If you're unable to sit up straight, then sitting on a cushion helps so much. Okay, so let's give it a bash. Come to sitting with your legs out in front of you. Have a pillow or a block or something handy, or a blanket, anything to raise you up, just so you can have an experience of both. Okay, so first we'll do it without anything underneath us. Come to sit in Dandasana with your legs straight out ahead. Feet flex up towards the ceiling. Quads lightly active, so your kneecaps are drawing up, legs are straight. Feel what's happening in your hips. So just roll back on your bum, round your back. Can you feel you're sitting more on the back of your sit bones? Okay. Yeah. And then bend your knees to make it easier and sit forwards and almost stick your bum out. Can you feel then you're sitting forwards on your sit bones?
Yeah.
So we always want to maintain that forwards on the sit bones with legs straight in Dandasana. If you find naturally your back curls back, rather keep your knees a little bent, and let's all put our hands to the side. By bending the knees is a quick fix to help your pelvis tip more forwards into an anterior tilt, we call it. Place your hands at the back, just above your coccyx in your pelvis. We don't want that slumping back into your hand. Feel, curl back. We want that to move forwards and up in a seated position. Bend your knees so you can really feel the difference. Okay. Can you keep your sacrum up like that with straight legs? If not, keep them bent, or the block or cushion is going to really help you. So let's all take our support. Maybe it's a shirt, a blanket, a block, whatever you have, and sit on the support. Okay. For a lot of people that struggle to sit up tall here, this can be such a relief that they can actually sit up straight now without struggling. So it's a massive, massive help. Okay. For those with tighter hamstrings. Okay. And then on your block, can you feel how the block has tipped your pelvis forwards so that you're sitting more on the front of your sit bones? Yeah?
Yeah.
Then arms to your sides. If you have very long arms, maybe your hands are behind you a bit. Lift your chest and sit up nice and tall. So maybe you're staying on your block now. Maybe you're taking your block out from underneath you if you didn't need it as much, and find your Dandasana. Fingers are pointing forwards, either on fingertips if you're like me and have short arms, or flat hands if you have longer arms. And if your arms are really long, you might have to take your arms back a little bit for some space. Lift your chest. Bring the shoulder blades together and down, just as you do in Tadasana, mountain pose. And if you can, straighten your legs, active legs, feet flexed, gaze straight ahead. And that is your Dandasana. Staff pose, or our seated Tadasana. So tell me how it felt with the block underneath your hips. Did anyone feel that that was life-changing?
Yeah, easier, much easier.
Much nicer. Much, much, much nicer. So something that's really important for you to remember whenever we're sitting on the floor and somebody or you cannot sit up straight and get to feel that you're sitting forwards on your sit bones, taking a support or a little bit of height changes everything. Okay, so you need to bear that in mind. It might not only be for this pose, it might be all the rest of the poses we're doing seated. And it's not a bad thing, it just helps so much more. So it's very, very helpful for your students, remember that. Lynn?
Is it not lazy though?
Not at all.
Do you not develop your back by using the block?
It's actually better to sit on a block and be able to sit upright, and then you are strengthening your back. Then if you were slouching because you couldn't sit up straight, then you're getting zero benefit of the pose. So it's not lazy, it's not less of a pose, it just works better for your body. And that is perfectly, and I promise you, 50% of people in the classes that I teach sit on a block because it works better for their body. And especially beginners. Even advanced people that cannot sit up straight because of maybe their pelvis or their hamstrings, take a block. And it's just a tool. It's not a negative thing at all. Okay. All right, so that should be fairly straightforward. So we're building postural strength seated with our legs out in front of us. We'll take it a little bit further now into our next few poses. If you have any questions, shout now before I go on. All good?
No.
Okay, I'm going to flip forward a little bit just because I like to do it in my own order. On page 78, you'll find our next forward bend, which is Janu Sirshasana, head of the knee pose. This is a very accessible forward bend because one leg is bent up like tree pose, right? One leg is bent like tree. You can even see in the picture there, that girl is sitting on a cushion, not that it looks like she's using it very much. Because one leg is bent, it makes it easier to forward fold. So this is a really nice, accessible forward bend for most people. I will show you first, and then we'll do it all together after that. So I start in Dandasana, and I'm going to bend one leg up. So when I bend that leg up, it's exactly like tree pose. I bring the sole of my foot to touch the inner thigh, okay? And my hips are still mostly pointing forwards. The more advanced version is to have your hips out to the side, and then you have to twist more. So for today, we won't do the advanced one. Just from Dandasana, we bend one leg up like tree pose legs, okay? We now reach both arms up to create that length in the spine and the length in the sides of the body. And when I start to forward fold, I want to forward fold from the hips, okay? And if you couldn't sit forwards just sitting, taking a block is going to allow you to fold from your pelvis more, okay? So again, the block is super helpful in all of these. So I'm going to slowly start coming down, emphasizing trying to keep a bit of length in the spine. And maybe I use a strap, which I'm actually going to show you because the strap looks really awesome in this pose, okay? So if I have a strap, if hamstrings are very tight and I can't quite reach my foot without excessively rounding the spine, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. I'm going to use the strap to sit up nice and straight, lift my chest, and maybe lean forwards a little bit from the hips, okay? So if you have a strap, try it like this. I think it creates a lovely pose with a nice lifted chest, and you will be feeling that stretch in your hamstrings, big time, okay? So that's option one. Option two, hand on the shin, keeping a little bit of lift in the chest, if you cannot go very low, right? Option three, we're going to take hold of either side of the foot, keep a sense of lift in the chest, okay? And then finally, when I fold, can you see the spine will round when you fold your head towards your shin, okay? It's natural, our back will round. What we don't want with the spine is this, okay? My hamstrings maybe are restricted. I can't reach my foot, so I'm excessively rounding my back to try and hold my foot. Then rather be more upright or with a strap to build the length in the hamstring and keeping a sense of lift in the chest as you come down, even if it's here, here, or here. The lower you go, the back will round a little bit is fine, not excessively. Okay, does that make sense in terms of the spine and rounding in a forward fold? We encourage length, but we do round because it is a forward fold, which means it is spinal flexion. Just as a back bend with spinal extension, the back arched, this is the opposite. It's a forward fold, spinal flexion coming down. Unless, remember when you looked at Jamie last night? And she was in that wide-legged forward fold. Where are you, Jamie? Jamie might, because we've seen her standing, Jamie might be able to do this with her back completely straight. Okay. She might be the exception, okay, because that's just how she moves. She's got super long hamstrings. She's folding completely from her hips. And Jamie, can you come into the pose? You'll notice even with Jamie, when her nose goes onto her shin, which I'm sure it does, I'm going to spotlight you, Jamie. Thanks for demoing for us. Even though Jamie can fold in half like a pancake, when her nose goes onto her shin, can you see her back is even a little bit rounded? Not much. And we know she can fold flat in half with a straight back. Thanks, Jamie. Okay. Does that make sense in terms of the spine? So everybody thinks that you're supposed to be able to fold flat. Some might, but all of us are going to be a little bit rounded. That is normal. We just don't want excessive rounding. We don't want like a hunchback forward folding. We don't want. Does that make sense? Let's give it a go. Sit with your legs straight out in front of you in Dandasana. So that's kind of our starting position. From here, bend your right leg up so that the sole of your foot touches the left inner thigh, like tree pose. Inhale, reach your arms up to create length in the sides of your body. And now think of folding from the hips, keeping a fairly straight back, slowly forward fold, just as we do when we're going to pyramid, right? We're folding from the hips. If you feel like your hips, you cannot fold from your hips, please sit on a cushion or a block. I'll try and have a look in a sec. Either you're using a strap. If you have a strap, feel it because it feels awesome, even if you can't hold your foot. If you're using a strap, pull on the strap and feel how it lifts your chest and you're getting the stretch all the same. Or if you're holding your foot like Jamie, come into a halfway lift and lift your chest, which also feels really nice. Yes. Okay. And then maybe you're coming down into the forward fold. And then keep thinking of taking your nose towards your toes. So you're trying not to fold your head to your knee. You're trying to lengthen forwards towards your foot. Kirsten, I'm spotlighting you just so I can see you. Nice, that looks fantastic with the strap. Beautiful. And now hold the strap and now just lift your chest and broaden your collarbones a little bit more. Yes, and now lengthen the back of your neck so your neck is in line with spine. So can you see with this strap on Kirsten how lovely that pose looks? You don't need to be folded in half. She's getting all the same benefits of the pose, the same stretch in her hamstrings, and this strap is keeping her a little bit more upright and giving her something to work with to keep the chest lifted. So try and straighten your back, Kirsten. Straighten your back. Lift your chest. It actually stretches more with a straight back. Thank you. All right, let's swap legs. Both legs straight out in front of you. Bend your left leg up like tree pose. Reach both arms up overhead. Feel length in the spine. Keep that length as you slowly, slowly begin to forward fold. Your hands may come to your shin or your strap or on either side of your right foot. Take a little halfway lift there. Inhale, lift your chest like a halfway lift. Create length. And then if you maybe want to just stay here because that length is better for you rather than excessive rounding. And Gary, just drop your chin slightly so your neck is in line with your spine. And then option to forward fold, bringing your nose into your shin for those crazy flexy ones. Not necessary though. You're all getting the same stretch at whatever point you are in this pose. Okay. And then slowly coming upright. Lift your chest, halfway lift. Then reach arms up. Then release. So that's quite a nice way to get in and out of the poses. Just as we do in the sun salutation, little halfway lift, forward fold, and then to come out, little halfway lift, then out. Questions? Lynn?
Do you press your heel into your leg like you do when you're in an active tree pose?
For this one, Lynn, not so much. You will just let it'll be a bit more passive. So more like your butterfly pose, when the soles of your feet are together, you're just letting that bent knee relax out to the side. So there's a little bit of an opening in the hip. So it's not going to be pushing into your inner thigh of the other leg, just more passive. Does anyone feel any discomfort in the bent knee?
Sorry, guys.
If there was any discomfort in the bent knee, what you could do, and this is only if someone's like really uncomfortable, the block you can place underneath the thigh. So basically it's taking the load, the weight of that knee just hovering in space out. And often those with kind of knees that feel a little bit sticky in positions like this, it can take a lot of pressure off. So block can either support the bent knee, or your block can support you underneath the hips. And if you have a block and you want to feel it one more time, try it sitting on a block. It feels amazing. It's much nicer than sitting flat on the floor. Okay. Because it's tilted my hips forwards, so I'm able to fold more from my hips, and it gives more space, and it's awesome. Okay. Happy with that? Any other questions? All good.
Laura.
Yes, Belinda. Hi.
Can I go? What is the, I mean, maybe it's an absolutely silly question because I know that it creates length in spine, but what is the whole purpose of the halfway lift in the flow?
Yeah,
just
so
to open up through the shoulder.
It's to create a little bit more length in the spine, Belinda. In the sun salutation? And in this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and in this pose, just to open up to the chest.
Absolutely. To bring awareness to your spine, to lengthen more, and then to forward fold. To avoid encouraging rounding and flopping down, but to create a little bit of length and awareness and stability, and then forward folding. Trying to keep the spine lengthening forwards. And you'll feel with that, your back muscles also engage a little bit. So it almost like is a little bit of a strengthening for your back muscles, and then forward folding. So it's just a nice little activation to bring awareness to lengthening the spine. And to avoid excessive rounding. Okie dokie. I'm going to flip backwards now to page 77. And this one is Paschimottanasana. This is with both legs straight in front of you. So it's going to feel less, well, it won't be as comfortable as your previous pose, Janu Sirsasana, because both legs are straight, it's going to feel more intense. It's going to be more stretch through the back. Okay. So in Paschimottanasana, it means intense forward fold or intense west side stretch, okay? Not a great English translation, so we call it double leg forward fold, okay? Or Paschimottanasana. So both legs are straight, so I'm coming from Dandasana again. I'm going to sit on my block because I like to promote using props because they are super beneficial. We're going to inhale, reach up through the arms to create awareness of length, Belinda. And then we're going to forward fold. Again, I'm going to use my strap, which I think looks fantastic in this pose because you have such a nice lifted chest. And then you can almost pull on the strap to lift your chest more. So I'm like in that halfway lift position, and it's a very big stretch. Okay, my hamstrings are quite long, but I can still feel a very big stretch here with the strap. So it's working all the same, okay? Or I can bring hands into shins. I'm going to lengthen forwards, not collapse forwards, yes? Or maybe I'm going to take hold of the outer edges of my feet. Inhale, lift chest to create awareness of the spine to lengthen, neck in line with spine. I can stay here, or you can forward fold. Okay. Even when in my forward fold, I'm going to think of lengthening my nose forwards towards my ankles, just to create awareness of lengthening always, rather than like this, right? To come out, a little halfway lift, arms up, release. Just a personal preference. You can also just come out of the pose. It's sometimes quite nice to have that halfway mark and then come all the way up. So let's give it a go. Join me here on your mat with your legs out in front of you, with or without a block. I think the block is awesome. Feels great for me. Both legs are straight. Feet flexed up to the ceiling. Inhale, both arms reach up, feeling length in the sides of the body. And then we slowly start to fold forwards from the hips, just as we do when we're standing. So this is basically like your standing forward fold, done seated, right? Exactly the same. Maybe you're using your strap, and if you are, awesome, good for you. Lift your chest and pull on the strap and feel what an amazing stretch you get with a beautifully lifted chest. Yes, I think it's a stunning version of the pose. Okay, otherwise you're holding your shins or your ankles and you're still having a sense of lift in the chest, so we're not excessively rounding, or you're holding the outer edges of your feet. Take one more breath, inhale, lift. Maybe you just stay here in your lift. If you're very comfortable in this pose, option to fold your head down. Not necessary though. If you start to fold and you're rounding your back a lot and losing the sense of lift in your chest, maybe stay upright a little bit more. Keep the awareness of length in the spine. If you're comfortably folded in half, think of lengthening your nose towards your ankles. So you're still encouraging a little bit of lengthening forwards. Good. Inhale, halfway lift. Reach arms up and release. Can you feel how much stronger that pose is than the one where the one leg is bent?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very big stretch for the whole back of the body, your back, your lower back, your hamstrings, all the way down. It's quite a strong pose. Any questions on those two forward bends? Okay. I'm going to do next the wide-legged forward bend on page 81 so that I've covered all the poses that are in your assessment. Okay. So on page 81, you will find Upavishta Konasana, wide-legged forward fold. So again, exactly like the standing poses, this is the seated version of your wide-legged forward fold. So you'll notice in yoga we do a lot of the same shapes, just seated, standing, upside down, a lot of the same leg positions, which makes it easier for you to put together sequences later on. Okay, so what are we stretching when our legs are opening out to the sides here?
Inner thighs?
What was that, Nat?
Adductors.
I said
Adductors.
inner thighs.
Inner thigh muscles, and still a little bit of hamstrings, but a lot of inner thighs. Okay, so when we come into this pose, we can start in, once again, you can use your block if that is serving you. Awesome, go for it. When we come into this pose, we're opening the legs up to the side. They don't need to be way out to the side. Go as far as what feels comfortable for you. For most of us, it'll be at about a 45-degree angle out to the sides. So this is a little bit trickier because now you've brought in your inner thigh muscles. So I'd like you to start, first we'll do it with our fingers behind us and using the fingertips to sit forwards on the sit bones. Feet flexed up to the ceiling. And here, you can just stay here if this is enough of a stretch, okay? Second option will be to bring your hands forwards. Third option is to bring your hands or your elbows down. For those that are very happy here, maybe you bind your big toes and you lie your chest onto the floor. It just depends on where your body goes. Should we give it a go? Let's come to sitting in Dandasana and then open your legs up to the sides. Flex your feet up towards the ceiling. Open your legs only as far as what's comfortable for you. So maybe bring them in a little bit, okay? Then place your hands behind your back and use your fingertips to push off your fingers and sit forwards on your sit bones, okay? For a lot of people, we stay here, okay? This is enough, so stay here, okay? If it's a massive stretch, and you're just able to sit forwards on your sit bones only because your hands are helping you, stay like this. If you find you can move your hands and it doesn't change actually what's happening to your hips, you're still able to sit forwards, only then would you go further forwards. Without excessively rounding the spine, a little bit of rounding your spine, okay? Maybe you stay in like a little halfway lift here, and this is enough for you. Maybe you're very comfortable in this pose and you bring your elbows or your forehead to the mat. There always are a few. I'm sure our dancers will be squished like a pancake here. You could also, wow, Wilma, if you could, I'll spotlight Wilma for you just so you can see different experiences. For me, it's very uncomfortable. For Wilma, can you? She's very comfortable.
Oh my God.
So we have this in yoga. Yes. Okay. And that is fine because Wilma's body just goes there and that's perfectly cool. For some of us, we're just using our hands to sit up tall and it's already a massive stretch. For me, it's a massive stretch. Thanks, Wilma. Okay. So I want you to find what's best for your body. Keeping a sense of lift in the chest, length in the spine, hands behind your back, I would say is the most used version of this pose. It's the most accessible and is the most helpful, and only if you're crazy flexy like Wilma is it comfortable to go forwards. Okay, that's more rare. Gary, that looks great behind with your hands behind your back. Fantastic. Can you see? I'm going to spotlight Gary if you don't mind. Because look at his great length of spine, lift in chest, with hands behind the back. You're all doing the same pose. You're all getting the same stretch. You're just going to where it feels best for your back. And that looks fantastic. Thanks, Gary. Okay. Any other questions? You can gently hold the back of your legs to assist your legs back in because sometimes you feel very stretched out. Bring your legs back in and come back to sitting. So the biggest thing with all these forward folds, okay, is we need to tilt from the pelvis, right? So we do this with the hips. It's an anterior pelvic tilt, okay? Just sit on your bum for one more moment. We'll discuss the hip thing one more time. With your hands on your hips, legs crossed so it's a little bit more comfortable. We don't want to sit back on our hips like this because that's a posterior pelvic tilt. Can you see? If the pelvis is tucked underneath you, the spine will round. Yeah, because the pelvis and the spine are joined together. Okay. We want to now do the opposite. Sit forwards on your sit bones. Stick your bum out. You might even see people do this in class. They wiggle their bum out. Sometimes even pull their bum out like this. Yeah. We want to sit forwards on the sit bones. When we do that, can you feel how it encourages more lengthening in the spine and more tipping forwards from the pelvis in an anterior tilt? Okay. You don't need to use anterior and posterior tilt to your students, but you yourself know that's what's going on. If someone is unable to sit upright in an anterior tilt, block, bolster, cushion is vital to get an anterior tilt for forward bends. Okay, that's what's most important. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So I encourage all of you, even you crazy flexy ones that fold flat in half, is to play with sitting on a block, because you're going to use it a lot when you teach students. Okay, I don't care if you can sit flat or if you need a block, feel both, because it's one of the most helpful uses of the props. And the props are there for a reason. It's not a negative thing. It makes the pose correct. Okay. Any questions on anterior tilts in forward bends? Okay. We're trying to keep a sense of length in the spine. What we don't want is excessive rounding. Okay. And you would only excessively round if what wasn't happening in the hips?
Anterior tilt.
Anterior tilt.
If you were tilting forward.
If you as a teacher didn't give someone a block so that they were sitting back on their sit bones, then they're going to excessively round. And no matter how much you tell them to not round, they're not going to be able to, because they need a little bit of support from the pelvis to anterior tilt so that they can fold more from the hips. Does that make sense? Okay, so blocks are your best friends. Okay, how are we feeling? All good after that? Natalie, you have a question?
When I do that wide-legged forward fold, I feel the stretch sort of all the way down, like past my knee.
Yes, that's normal as well. So your long adductors are going to be attaching in there as well, and you're going to feel the stretch all through the inner leg. And that's quite normal. All good.
So, and I just come out of it quite slowly, because sometimes it feels a bit jarring to like...
Yeah, naturally, because it's not a great sensation. It's not a nice pull. You could also bend your knees a little bit, and it may take it out of that. Especially when you come out of the pose, maybe a little bend in the knees, so it's less, feels less tense, will help a lot.
Perfect.
Thanks, Nat. Cool. Any other questions to do with forward bends? No. Those are the main ones you'll be doing in your assessment, okay? We'll be doing all of those that we've covered. I'm going to talk more about other positions when we do lotus and things like that as we go along, okay? Can I continue into seated hip and groin poses? Happy to continue? All still with me? Good. Yes. Okay. Page 83. These ones are nice. On page 83, you will find your seated hips and groin poses. So these are using more external rotation of the legs. When else did we externally rotate our legs in the standing poses?
Tree.
Triangle.
Tree, triangle. Warrior two.
Goddess, squat.
Goddess, yes.
Squat, yeah.
Skandasana. And side angle. And half moon pose. Okay. All right, so now these are the seated external rotation poses. So we're going to start, first of all, nice easy one. We call Sukhasana, easy pose. This is simply sitting with your legs crossed. Okay, so when we sit with our legs crossed in Sukhasana, easy pose, of course, we're crossing our shins and we're coming to seated. Okay, so my pants are very dark, so it's hard to see. If you want to get your knees, that they're a bit more level on each side. So a lot of the time we cross our legs and then we land up with one leg up like this, right? We can add a bit of technique to this pose. You can bring your shins further forward. So instead of having your feet close towards your bum, I brought my feet more forwards, shins more forwards. And then I'm crossing my legs, my shins rather, in the middle. Okay, and then my feet are roughly underneath me. So come to having a seat in Sukhasana, easy pose, cross-legged seated position. If your feet are very close to your bum, one knee is going to be higher than the other knee. So bring your shins further forward. So they're kind of like parallel to the top of your mat or side of your mat. Feet roughly underneath knees. And then you're crossing your legs at mid-shin. Can you feel how that levels your knees a little bit more?
Yeah.
Good. Again, we don't want to sit back on our sitting bones. We want to sit forwards in a little bit of an anterior pelvic tilt. So make sure you're not sitting back. If someone is sitting like this, unable to anterior tilt, do it so you can feel what it's like. Round your back, lift your knees. So say they had maybe tight hips or tight quads and weren't able to sit tall. Does this feel very comfortable?
No.
You feel your abs are working, your back starts to get tired. So don't leave your students in a position like this where they cannot sit tall. What would you do?
Give them a block.
So if you have a block or a cushion, just feel it here with your legs crossed. One more time. I'm drilling it in a little bit if you haven't noticed. By sitting on a block, it's going to help you to sit up straight and makes it way more comfortable. So if you want to do like arm stretches or breathing or meditation, and someone is sitting like this, it's going to be awful. So make sure that your students can sit up tall with a little tilt in the hips, with a block if they need to. Okay. All right, so a lovely position to do stretches, arm work, twisting, whatever you want to in that cross-legged seated pose. It is only comfortable if you are able to sit forwards on your sit bones in a little anterior tilt. You do have other options there before I move on. Gary just reminded me. There's a cool version of this pose when you bring your one heel more towards the center of your pelvis, and then your other heel, can you see how my knees are way wider? And instead of crossing my shins, I brought my feet to the middle of my pelvis. And this pose is called Asana, and it feels very nice. Also a lovely version of a cross-legged seated pose. So my heels are kind of in the center of my pelvis. Knees are a lot wider and can also feel a lot more comfortable. Okay, happy with that? Yes. Good. I'm going to move on to our next pose on page 87. Sorry, I'm doing it in my own order as always. Baddha Konasana, butterfly pose. We all know this one. Okay, so great external rotation pose. In Baddha Konasana, I bring the soles of my feet together to touch. Knees open out to the side, external rotation. First option, if this felt a little bit tight and uncomfortable, again, you could have your hands behind your back, which actually feels really nice. You'll feel it in a sec. And then second option, holding the outer edges of the feet. So I'm holding more underneath the baby toes, and I'm sitting up tall and drawing my chest through. Okay. Third option, you could forward fold flat in your butterfly pose. So join me on your mat. Come to sit with the soles of your feet together in Baddha Konasana. First of all, once your feet are together, reach your hands back behind you. Now notice, if you push your big toes together, you're doing it more actively, yeah? Your knees may lift. If you relax and allow the soles of your feet to open, you're cheating a little bit, but it's fine because we're getting a little bit of movement from our ankles as well to help. Both are fine, okay? So it depends what you want. Do you want to teach people like maybe crow pose, where you want them to squeeze the soles of their feet and work actively here? Or are you going for the stretch and just allowing the feet to relax? The soles of the feet will turn up a little bit. And we've gotten a few degrees of extra mobility because of our ankles. And then your legs open more. Both are fine. So sit up tall, fingertips behind you. First version. Feels great. And you can like push your thighs down here, which is quite nice. I really like this version. Great version of the pose. Second version, fingers interlace around the baby toe sides of the feet, so underneath the feet. And then you can sit up nice and tall. Feel like your chest is drawing through your arms so that you're sitting more upright. If this felt uncomfortable, you go back to hands behind you, which is great. If you're very comfortable here, maybe you want to go to the third version and forward fold. Your back will round as you forward fold in this one. Elbows on the floor, maybe your nose is on the floor, depends on where your body goes. All is perfect wherever you are. Can you feel the stretch into your inner thighs and your groins? Slowly coming back up and release. Okay, so could you feel the difference if your feet are pushing together? A little bit more active, your knees might lift a bit. Where if you let your feet relax and the soles of your feet open a little bit, your knees drop down a little bit more. Both are fine, it depends on why you're doing the pose. Questions?
Laura, do you
Yes.
actively push your legs towards the floor outwards?
You can if you want. If it's accessible for you and it feels quite nice to engage a little bit of encouraging of the external rotation to push down, I feel that feels really nice, especially when your hands are behind your back and you can actively push the legs a little bit more open. What I say isn't good if you were sitting and you use your elbows to force your knees down. That wouldn't be good. If you're doing it without your arms and using your own muscles to push down, all good, because you'll stay safe. But if you're forcing down with your elbows, don't force anything. Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry. Yes.
Hi, Daisy.
Hi, Laura. I just want to find out, are we trying to get your feet as close as possible to your pelvis?
Yes, so it depends, Daisy. So maybe you guys saw when you watched the anatomy, the videos, we all have different shaped hip sockets, right? Like we saw, I'm assuming, who was flat earlier? You've all moved around on my screen. If your hips are
Wilma.
very, very open. Yes, Wilma. Where's Wilma gone? I've lost her. There's Wilma. Hi, Wilma. So Wilma, can you please do this pose if you don't mind? And I'm going to spot. I'm just assuming her hips are like this, just from her previous. So to answer your question, Daisy, it depends on the shape of your hip sockets. So you can see when Wilma comes into the pose, her knees are flat on the floor pretty much. So if Wilma brings her heels closer towards her sit bones, it's going to intensify the pose for her. But I mean, she's already flat, so it makes no difference. Okay. Who feels a little bit more restricted in this pose? So we can give her an option. Who hasn't got the most crazy flat hips like Wilma? Just if you're normal. Or Daisy, why don't you do the pose? Let's have a look. If your feet are a little bit further away from you, it can be a little bit easier. Okay, closer feet, a bit harder. Feet further away, maybe a little bit easier. And Daisy, you're actually also very comfortable in this pose. So whatever works for you. Feet closer is going to be harder. Feet further away, maybe a little bit easier, wherever it feels best for your body, because we all have different shapes, different shaped hips. Thanks, Daisy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Happy with that? Nice pose. We do it all the time. We love it. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 86 now. which is our Gumukhasana, cow face pose. Remember, we were doing the arms for it. We've done it a few times in the sequences. Now we'll do the legs. So there's two ways of entering this pose, and it kind of depends however you want to get into it, depending on your flow, whatever you're teaching, whatever you like, really. So firstly, I can come into it from seated. So I can sit with legs crossed and then cross one leg over the other, and then I'm shuffling my knees and feet so that my knees are stacked on top of one another, okay? And my feet are out to the side. The higher your feet come forwards, the more it's going to stretch. The closer your feet are towards your thighs, less of a stretch, however works for you. Okay, so one way of getting in the pose. Another way we can get in, when we did it, I think last night in our twist class, I can cross one leg behind the other in a kneeling position. Okay, I can cross from behind, or I can cross from in front. Same. Okay. Shuffle my feet to the sides, and then I can sit backwards, sit between my heels. And I think that way flows quite nicely in a vinyasa flowy class. So do you want to try both ways of entering? So either you're just sitting and you're going to place your legs in Gumukhasana. Okay, so you can feel, pause there for a moment. Remember that little twirl we did yesterday. So if your right leg is on top, whatever leg is on top, you turn towards the top foot. And you keep my toes where they are so you don't move your toes. That's the trick. And then you spin around and then you land up with your other leg on top. It's quite a fun pose to transition from sides. Hopefully that worked for you. Don't move your feet and it'll work. Yes. Always quite fun. And then maybe you need to release your legs, or you can just roll forwards onto all fours. Come to all fours, uncross your legs. Maybe you've done a few cat-cows, and then you could cross your right knee behind your left knee. So you can cross from behind, or you can cross your right leg from in front. The behind is easier. The in front, you got to work for it a little bit more. But either one. Then you shuffle your feet out to the side and you sit your bum between your heels and come to sitting. Okay, so you've got options. It's quite a fun one to add into your sequence. Okay, I really like to add on the little twirl, which is quite fun. I also like going into cross-legged downward dogs, and then maybe you unspiral legs and do like little reverse tabletops. So it's quite a fun pose to sequence for if it's relevant in your sequence. Anyway, so try and stack your knees on top of one another. Again, as much as what's possible and comfortable for your bone structure, okay? Sometimes it doesn't cross over very comfortably. That's also fine. Cross as much as it goes, okay? Then your feet are on either side of you, and the soles of your feet are kind of turned up, okay? So you're resting more on the baby toe sides of your feet. From here, you can simply just forward fold and feel a really good stretch into the hips. Yeah, big stretch. You could also walk it off to one side. So whatever leg is on top, walk your hands over to that side. So you can do this. This is a yummy, yummy, big, intense hip stretch. Maybe easy for some, very intense for me. And then coming back upright. Okay. Then we do the bind. So whatever leg is on top, opposite arm goes up. Remember, like eagle pose, if the right leg is on top, then the left arm is on top. It's the same here. So I've got my left leg on top, so I'm going to have my right arm up. Okay, opposite arms to legs. So your top arm going up is quite straightforward. So you're trying to bring your hands between your shoulder blades. Okay. The arm that goes back, like Gary felt the other night, is a little bit more tricky. So this arm, you can extend out to the side, turn your thumb towards the floor, extend the arm behind you, and then bend your elbow to bring your hands towards one another. It doesn't matter if your fingers don't clasp, you can just reach your hands towards one another. Okay. Then in this pose, try not to like sink off to one side because you're trying to bind your hands. Try and keep your rib cage level, your chest upright. The bottom arm is actually the trickier one. So you need to try and bring that shoulder blade in, remember? You're trying to roll that shoulder back. You're trying to bring your bottom shoulder blade in towards the spine. That's the hard part. Top arm, you're trying to keep your elbow quite close to your ear so you can feel a stretch in the tricep. Okay, release your arms, do a little puppy twirl or a little spiral to swap legs. I call it a puppy twirl. You can call it whatever you want. Someone called it a gorilla hang. Just a fun little move to swap legs. Okay, other legs on top. Try and stack your knees on top of one another. Notice if you bring your feet more forwards, it's going to be a bigger stretch. Your feet closer towards your hips, an easier stretch. It depends. Some of you might not even feel a stretch here. That's also okay. If you forward fold, you're going to feel more stretch into the bum and a little bit more into your outer hip. So it's stretching your glute medius, and when you fold forwards, then it wraps around into your glute maximus. Not important to know. You can walk hands from side to side, also feels quite nice to do this pose, mostly focusing as a hip opener. Your legs are still externally rotating in this pose. They've just abducted, so they've come to the midline. Okay, coming back up to seated. Opposite arms to legs. So whatever leg you have on top, say you have your right leg on top, left arm goes up. You have your left leg on top, right arm goes up. Okay, so one arm goes up, your bottom arm is going to extend to the side, thumb to the floor. Extend the arm behind you, bend your elbow, walk the hands towards one another, and don't leave your bottom shoulder rolling forwards like this. Bring the shoulder blade in towards the spine to bring that shoulder and arm back. Yeah. Ribs level, chest up, and release. Okay, how do we feel in that? Fun pose.
Laura, I can't even get my arm up. I mean, my elbow is pushing forward. I really struggle with this. I don't know how to get that arm up.
Okay, don't force it, Lynn, at the bottom, the top arm.
Yeah, it's just, I can't even, I must be so tight there. That's all I can think.
No worries, that's really fine. Lynn, take your elbow more out to the side. Can you see me? Yes, like that.
No.
And then back.
Right.
I will try and spotlighting. Yes. So if the closer your elbow is to your ear, the harder it is to get it back. If your arm is a little bit more out to the side, it makes it easier. So for this pose, Lynn, for you, I would just take your other arm and just help that elbow in a bit. So one arm up. And then use your other hand. Yes. So Lynn, that'll be more beneficial for you to do the pose like that.
Mm-hmm.
So look how we've modified. That looks fantastic, Lynn. So now you can feel that stretch where you need it and not struggling with that arm on its own. So you're going to do the pose like that for me.
Okay.
Fabulous. And then you can feel a nice stretch in that tricep muscle. Thanks.
Yeah, the other one's painful. The other one.
Yeah, don't force it. It shouldn't be painful. We're just going to hold the elbow and feel a good stretch there. Okay. All righty. Any other questions?
Laura.
Hi. Hi, Nicole.
Hi. With the twist in the feet or in the legs,
yes.
Is it necessary for both? I don't even know how it's possible, but for both, because I find that I have a lot of pain in here when I do this particular pose.
Yes.
So it just feels like everything is flopping out, and I don't know what is the right way and what is the wrong way to do this because it's so painful inside.
So first of all, Nicole, that pain you're feeling is exactly where we should be feeling the stretch. So you're doing it perfectly right. We're feeling that stretch on the outside of the bum, and it is a very, very intense stretch. So that's normal. You look fantastic. There's nothing wrong about your pose. That's perfect. And it's just a big stretch for you. Like me as well. I feel such a massive stretch in my hips in this pose. And my sister feels nothing, and it's very irritating. So you're like me, and that looks perfectly fine, and your feet are great. Your feet might not be exactly the same on either side. It doesn't matter. You're doing it perfectly.
Thank you. I just wanted to check because I thought this is really painful. I must be doing something wrong.
It's a really, 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 really big stretch on the outer thighs. And it's just because, like me, it's just a tight area. It's just a tight area in those outer hips. And then it may cause a little bit of difference in the legs. It's totally fine because we all are different in our hips and different bone structures and all sorts of stuff. And that's perfectly fine, Nicole.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Okay, any other questions? Roxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to ask. So I also.
Roxy?
No, I also really struggle in the pose, so it feels like my hips literally go into a spasm when I do it. Is there any pose that can follow this one to try and stretch out the hips? Because I feel like even in class when I do it, I'm always sort of then trying to stretch it out before we go into the next one, just because it does like spasms. So is there something that can follow this pose?
Yeah, so maybe one before or after, you would just maybe have to play with it. Another one that's kind of gonna, if you're already stretching it, so the sensation you're feeling here is stretching, okay? And it's just freaking out a little bit. So what you can do, Roxy, you can then just bring your foot to the ground here, and then you could move into like a little rotation, like
okay.
Okay, it is still stretching the same muscle, so both are stretches, but it might just be a nice little halfway point, okay? And then you could just straighten your leg forwards to release it before going over to the other side. I do think it's going to be one of the things, the more you do it and the more you kind of condition that muscle to be strong and also more comfortable in that pose, it may improve over time.
Okay, it is strange because I mean it is one of the poses that I've always struggled with. Like I just feel like my hip always goes into a spasm, which is really weird.
Not nice.
And I always need to sort of like stretch
so that you didn't feel it as intensely, and it would maybe help your hips along the process. Just sit a little bit higher, okay? So maybe it levels out a little bit more, and maybe it's not causing as much strain. It sounds like it's straining a bit on that outer hip.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you can come out of it, you can just stretch it out. And then you just slowly move in and out of the pose if you need little breaks in between. If this was stretching here, you could open the leg out to the side. Just allow a little bit of movement to release. But I think sitting on a block, just so you don't strain in the pose, will be your go-to. And work with it a little bit. Explore and let me know.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Daisy, you had a question.
You answered it because I was going to ask if you could sit on the block.
Always. You can always sit on the block. It's amazing.
Okay.
Laura.
Yes, Belinda.
Do both the hips have to be grounded?
Ideally, Belinda. Again, if you couldn't ground both hips, you could sit on a block and that would help you ground. I mean, it's totally fine if one bum cheek is lighter than the other bum cheek. It's not the end of the world. The idea is to ground both sitting bones to the mat so that your pelvis is straight. So by sitting on a block or a blanket or a little bit of support could assist you with that. But you look quite comfortable there, Belinda.
Yeah, no, I am.
So we all have different experiences in the poses. So we can't assume that we all like a pose or we all dislike a pose because we're all so different, right? Okay. I'm going to talk about 2 more poses before we run out of time, and I'm choosing Malasana on page 88 and pigeon pose just before we run out of time before your lunch break. So Malasana, low yoga squat on page 88. We've done it a couple of times in the classes. We use it a lot, especially when we're teaching crow pose, our arm balance. So there's 2 ways to do Malasana. Firstly of all, you can do it with your feet wider apart and squat down, okay? When I come down, my knees are on my upper arms. That's your Malasana squat. Secondly, I can do it with feet together. It just depends where you're coming from, why you're doing it. I can almost move through a little Utkatasana, knees turn out, and then I'm sitting down into Malasana. Your heels might not touch the floor, okay? Just like Skandasana, when you go to the side, your Achilles tendon is being stretched, yeah? So most likely, especially when the feet are together, it's harder to put the heels down, and it doesn't matter. My heels are a little bit up. I'm bringing my chest down so that my upper arms are between my shoulders, and my back is going to be round. Okay, hands in the center of the chest, and you're very low and compact. Okay, so let's come together. First, start standing with your feet turned out. It's like just about hip distance apart. From here, squat down into your wide-legged Malasana. When the feet are apart, it should be a little bit easier to keep the feet on the floor. Okay. Bring your shoulders in between your knees, sit nice and low. Hands come to the center of the chest. Now here you could try and straighten your back if you wanted to, but naturally we're going to be a little bit rounder. Okay. And then use those legs, come back up to standing. Feet together, Tadasana feet. Bend the knees. Heels will pop up as you go low. Knees turn out. Low chest between the knees. And now you're going to feel even more round and more compact, okay? Hands come to the center of the chest, and your shoulders are between your knees or below your knees. And this is why it's such a good prep to move into crow pose. Okay. And then you can gently release and come up. You will do both of those in your final assessment way at the end. Questions? Can you feel the difference when the feet are wider apart? It's a bit easier to keep feet on floor. When the feet are together, your heels will most likely pop up a bit. We're very round, we're very compact, and your shoulders are on the inside of your knee. So this is why it's a great pose to teach when we do things like arm balances where our knees are connecting with our triceps. Any questions on Malasana, low yoga squat? Oh, good. You're nice and worn out now. Wendy, do you have a question?
The dreaded question, do you tuck in your tailbone?
No, don't even worry about your tailbone. Your bum will just be as is. Don't worry about tucking. Just as you squat, go down. Don't even need to think about it. Thanks, Wendy. Are you right for me to move to our final pose with me today, which is our pigeon pose?
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks, Lynn. Cool. So in our pigeon pose, and we touched on it when we did mermaid, when you come into pigeon, I'm going to try and get in the, you want your knee to be wide. Can you see? My right knee is on the outside of my right wrist, okay? That makes this more accessible and also helps you to level your hips and find a stable base and a whole lot of stuff. Don't bring your knee to the middle of the mat. Bring your knee wide. Okay, so when I come from plank downward dog, I take my knee to the outside of the wrist. Can you see that? So my knee is like almost off the edge of my mat. I've made it wider and broader to create more surface area for my legs to rest on and find a stable base for later on. Okay. Once my knees come down, I'm going to shuffle my back leg away. Okay, so I've come down, I'm going to shuffle back. So when I shuffle back, it's put my weight more towards the bum, towards the back. Okay. And it's brought my pelvis a little bit closer to the floor. Even here, my bum's not on the floor, so you don't have to sit flat. You want to feel that your hips are level on both sides. I'm not sitting off to the left. I'm not sitting off to the right. I'm sitting in the middle, okay? You don't have to bring your shin parallel to the top of the mat. That's extreme, okay? For those with very flexible hips that want to do that to get a bigger stretch, go for it, okay? But for the rest of us normal bodies, you can just have your shin comfortably sloping back, okay? Wherever it's comfortable for you, depending on the shape of your hips. Then, of course, when you come down, you can either be on your elbows, which takes a little bit of pressure off the knee, or you can have straight arms. Be aware in this pose, a lot of people feel knee niggles. So Wendy, you felt it in Skandasana. You would be a candidate to potentially feel your knee in this pose. So again, our favorite friend, I can place a block underneath my hip. So now it's taken the load off of my knee and put the load onto the block in the hip. And that should feel more comfortable if there's any kind of niggly knees. Let's give it a go. From plank, hips up, down dog. Bring your right knee to the outside of your right wrist as you come into pigeon pose. Take it wide, okay? Once your leg is in pigeon, shuffle your left leg back to place more weight towards the back leg. Slide your left leg away. Okay. Now feel your weight even on the right and left sides of the pelvis. And then you can walk your hands down and forward fold. So Roxy, you need to take your knee a bit wider towards me. Okay. Yes, that's better, Roxy. Thank you. Yes, that looks fantastic. All right. And then your elbows can be on the mat, or you can fully extend your arms. There should be no discomfort in your knee. You should be feeling a big stretch in your right bum cheek and maybe a little bit in the right inner thigh. Okay. Walk your hands back towards you. And when we do this pose as a back bend, we take our hands off the floor. So you want to feel like even here we are developing a sense of a stable base between the legs. If you're very flexy and you want to take your shin higher, feel free to indulge because we're doing it as a hip opener. Okay. Place hands down. Let's step back into downward facing dog and feel that on the left side. Left knee comes wide out to the outside of your left wrist. Take it wide. Then slide your right leg back behind you. Slide back to allow the hips to descend deeper into the pose. Make sure your back toes are pointing straight back behind you and not doing anything weird. And then forward fold onto your elbows or fully extend your arms. If you want to increase the stretch, you bring your shin more towards the top of the mat, more parallel. If you're feeling enough of a stretch, that's perfect where you are. Weight is even on both sides. And then you can walk your hands back towards you. Maybe you're practicing your stable base. We'll focus more on that when we do back bends, that you could lift your arms and you could balance there with your hips. But don't worry about that now. We'll talk more about that when we do mermaid. But that's the idea with having your knee a bit wider so that you've got more surface area to develop that stable base in pigeon. Because it's just the start on this pose. There's mermaids, there's back bends, there's a lot you can do here. Okay. Step back, downward dog, release, and tell me if you have any questions.
Can you say its name for me?
Eka, Eka meaning one, Pada, Raja, Kapotasana. Eka, Pada, Raja, Kapotasana. Eka meaning one, Pada meaning foot, Raja is king, Kapotasana, Kapota is pigeon, asana pose. So one-legged king pigeon pose. We're doing it here as a forward fold. The full pose is actually as a back bend. So this is like a modified Ekapada Raja Kapotasana because we're not doing the back bend. We're just doing it as a forward fold. And we use it all the time. It's a lovely bum stretch. It's a lovely external hip pose. Any other questions, Daisy?
The front leg, which is bent, must your foot be flexing?
Your foot will just be between a flex and a point, a little bit flointed. It can also just be relaxed, Daisy. So if you need to activate more in the pose, which we don't really need to in this pose, you could flex it, but it's not going to, it's often thought if you flex your foot, it's protecting your knee, but it's not. You can just relax your foot. It's kind of just going to be kind of flointed. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Did anyone feel discomfort in the knee? Wendy, are your knees okay there? So just as a note, Jamie's your hand up. Sorry, my screen is a bit glitchy. So sometimes you just move and I think your hand's up. So by having the block underneath the hip takes load off the knee. If anyone in future has a knee niggle or someone you're working with, is very helpful. Any other questions? You're all tired now. All good?
Yeah.
Well done, everyone. You've had a very big day. Have a lovely lunch. Catherine will see you a little later. Claire a little bit later. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I will see you all tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
See you later. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Laura.
Bye.
Bye.